The silver moonlight cascaded through the branches of ancient trees, casting dancing shadows on the ground as Serena stood at the edge of what appeared to be an ordinary garden wall. Her heart pounded with anticipation, her fingers tingling with the unfamiliar sensation of magic that had been awakening within her over the past few weeks. What secrets lay beyond these weathered stones? Why had she felt so inexplicably drawn to this place tonight? The moon beckons those who are ready to see, a melodious voice whispered in the evening breeze, causing Serena to spin around. There, hovering gracefully in the air, was a creature she had only read about in storybooks. A fairy with wings that seemed to capture and reflect the very essence of moonlight. "I'm Luna," the fairy introduced herself, her silvery laughter echoing like wind chimes. "And you, dear Serena, are right on time." Serena's eyes widened. "You know my name, but how?" "The garden has been whispering about you," Luna interrupted, performing an elegant aerial twirl. "We've been waiting for a new witch to discover us. Tell me, have you noticed strange things happening around you lately? Perhaps flowers blooming at your touch, or candles lighting themselves when you were deep in thought?" Serena nodded, remembering the incidents she tried so hard to rationalize. "I thought I was going crazy," she admitted. "Last week, my entire room rearranged itself while I was sleeping." Luna's wings sparkled with amusement. "That's just your magic saying hello. Would you like to meet the others who call this garden home? I must warn you though, once you step through these gates, your life will never be the same." With trembling fingers, Serena reached out to touch the ancient wall. To her amazement, it shimmered and became transparent, revealing a breathtaking vista beyond. The garden that materialized before her eyes was unlike anything she had ever seen. Flowers that seemed to be made of starlight swayed in a non-existent breeze, and paths of luminescent stones wound their way through beds of plants that changed colors with each passing cloud. As they walked along the glowing path, Luna explained, "The Enchanted Garden exists in a space between spaces, Serena. It's been here for centuries, nurturing magical beings and helping young witches like yourself discover their true potential." But lately, Luna's voice trailed off, her expression growing concerned. "Lately what?" Serena prompted, sensing the fairy's unease. Before Luna could answer, a playful gust of wind swirled around them, and an impish face materialized in the air. "Luna, you're not scaring our new friend with doom and gloom already, are you?" The face belonged to a sprite who materialized fully, floating cross-legged in the air. "Jasper," Luna sighed. "I was just about to welcome her properly." Jasper interrupted, performing a series of backflips in the air. "I'm Jasper, master of mischief and occasional helper of lost witches. Watch this." He snapped his fingers, and all the flowers around them started humming a harmonious melody. Serena couldn't help but laugh, but her attention was drawn to a massive willow tree whose branches seemed to sway with conscious movement. As they approached, she could have sworn she saw eyes open in its trunk. "Welcome, young one." A deep, gentle voice emanated from the tree. "I am Willow, keeper of the garden's memories." "And I," came a smooth voice from the shadows, "am Thorn." A black cat emerged, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that suggested it was far more than a simple feline. Though whether I'm friend or foe remains to be seen. The cat's form shone briefly, suggesting its shape wasn't quite fixed. From behind a cluster of healing herbs, a delicate figure emerged. An elf with grass-green hair and eyes like morning dew. "Don't mind Thorn," she said softly. "He likes to be mysterious." "I'm Fern, and these are my healing herbs. They've been quite excited about your arrival." "But where's Rowan?" Luna asked, looking around. "He should be here for this." As if on cue, a gruff but kind voice spoke out from behind a mushroom circle. "I'm right here, right here. Can't rush it, gnome, you know." A small, elderly figure with a long white beard and a red pointed hat waddled into view. "So, this is our new witch." Yes, I can see the magic practically buzzing around her." Serena felt overwhelmed, but in the best possible way. This is also credible, but why me? Why now? Luna and Rowan exchanged meaningful glances. The garden chooses those who are ready, Rowan explained, and it chose you for a reason. The question is, are you ready to learn why? As Serena looked around at her new magical companions, she felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something they weren't telling her. What was the concern that Luna had been about to mention? Why did she feel like this magical welcome was tinged with an urgent purpose? The moon climbed higher in the sky, casting its silvery light over the assembled group, and Serena knew she stood on the threshold of an adventure that would change her life forever. What mysteries would this enchanted garden reveal? What powers lay dormant within her, waiting to be discovered? And most importantly, what role was she destined to play in whatever challenge lay ahead? The morning dew sparkled like tiny diamonds across the enchanted garden as Serena returned, her heart still racing from her moonlit encounter with Luna the previous night. Would anyone believe her as she told them about the magical realm she had discovered? As she wandered through the misty paths, her fingers traced the velvet petals of flowers that seemed to lean into her touch. Curious, a gravelly voice spoke from behind a twisted oak tree. Most curious indeed. Serena spun around to find herself face to face with a peculiar figure. A gnome with a beard that sparkled with morning frost and eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. This was Rowan, though Serena didn't know it yet. "You can see me?" Rowan asked, stroking his crystalline beard thoughtfully. "Most interesting. Tell me, child, did you perhaps meet someone special last night?" Serena's eyes widened. Yes, a fairy named Luna. She was beautiful and mysterious, and she showed me this garden, but I wasn't sure if it was all just a dream. Rowan chuckled, the sound like pebbles rolling down a gentle stream. "Oh, it was no dream, my dear. And the fact that you can see me now, in broad daylight, tells me something very special about you." As they talked, Jasper the forest sprite couldn't resist playing one of his tricks, making flowers pop up under Serena's feet with every step she took. But instead of being startled, Serena laughed with delight, and the flowers bloomed even brighter in response to her joy. "Did you see that?" Rowan asked, his eyes twinkling. "The garden responds to you. Have you ever noticed strange things happening around you before? Perhaps books floating off shelves when you're excited, or plants growing unusually fast in your presence." Serena's mind raced back to all the unexplainable incidents she dismissed. Her mother's wilted plants springing back to life after she touched them, the way animals seemed to understand her when she spoke to them. "How did you know?" "Because, my dear Serena, you are a witch. And not just any witch, you have a natural affinity for garden magic, one of the most ancient and powerful forms of magic there is." From the branches above, Thorn the black cat observed with gleaming eyes. "The old gnome speaks truth," he purred, startling Serena as he transformed from shadow to solid form. "I sensed it the moment you entered the garden." Fern, who had been quietly tending to her herb nearby, approached with a handful of glowing leaves. "These responded to your presence before you even noticed them," she said softly, showing how the leaves pulsed with a gentle light. "But what does it all mean?" Serena asked, feeling overwhelmed yet excited by these revelations. Rowan placed his gnarled hand on her shoulder. "It means, dear child, that you have a choice to make. I can teach you about your powers, show you how to understand and communicate with the garden's inhabitants, and help you develop your magical abilities. But this path isn't always easy. The garden holds many secrets, some beautiful, others dangerous. Are you prepared for such a journey?" As if in response to his words, the ancient willow tree's branches swayed, though there was no wind. "She has a pure heart," Willow's voice whispered through her leaves, "and a strong spirit. She reminds me of another young witch who once walked these paths many moons ago." Serena's curiosity piqued. "Another witch? Who was she?" "That's a story for another time," Rowan said with a knowing smile. "First, you must decide if you're ready to begin your training. The garden has chosen to reveal itself to you, but what you do with this knowledge is entirely your choice." Jasper, who had been unusually quiet, created a small display of dancing lights around Serena. "Say yes," he urged, performing a playful aerial somersault. "It gets awfully boring around here with just these old souls for company. As Serena looked around at the extraordinary beings surrounding her, the wise gnome, the mysterious cat, the gentle elf, the ancient tree, and the mischievous sprite, she felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. The garden seemed to pulse with life and magic, calling to something deep within her soul. But before she could answer, a shadow passed over the garden, and Form's fur stood on end. "Something approaches," he hissed, his form flickering between solid and shadow. "What is it?" Serena asked, noticing how even the ever-playful Jasper had grown serious. Rowan's expression darkened. "That, my dear, is why we need more witches like you. The garden faces threats that few understand. Your answer may be more important than you realize." The shadow grew darker, and Serena felt her heart racing. What was coming? And more importantly, what would her answer be to Rowan's offer? As she stood there, surrounded by her new magical friends, she realized this moment would change her life forever. But was she ready for what lay ahead? The morning dew still clung to the emerald leaves as Serena made her way through the enchanted garden, her mind buzzing with questions after her enlightening conversation with Rowan. The old gnome's words about her magical potential echoed in her thoughts, making her wonder what other mysteries awaited her discovery. But little did she know that someone was watching her from behind the dancing shadows of the foliage, waiting for the perfect moment to make an entrance. "Now, where did Rowan say I should practice my first spell?" Serena muttered to herself, consulting a worn piece of parchment in her hands. Suddenly, the paper flew from her grasp, carried by what seemed to be an impossible gust of wind on this still morning. "Oh no!" she exclaimed, chasing after it. A melodious chuckle rang through the air, bouncing off the trees in a symphony of mischief. The parchment led Serena on a wild chase, always staying just out of reach, taking sharp turns around ancient trees and through flowering bushes. Have you ever tried catching a piece of paper that seemed to have a mind of its own? "Show yourself," Serena called out, trying to sound stern, but failing to hide the hint of amusement in her voice. The paper finally settled on a moss-covered log, and as Serena reached for it, a figure materialized before her eyes. Jasper, the forest sprite, sat cross-legged on the log, his emerald eyes twinkling with delight. His skin seemed to shift colors like autumn leaves in the sunlight, and his hair moved as if caught in a perpetual breeze. Well, if it isn't our new witch in training," he announced with a theatrical bow. "I thought you might need a little exercise before your lessons." Serena placed her hands on her hips, trying to catch her breath. Was that really necessary, Jasper? Necessary? Perhaps not. Entertaining? Absolutely. He bounced his feet, performing a perfect backflip that seemed to defy gravity. "But tell me, dear Serena, did you notice where your little chase led you?" For the first time, Serena took in her surroundings. She stood in a part of the garden she had never seen before, where the trees formed perfect archways and flowers grew in spiral patterns that seemed to pulse with magical energy. What secrets could this hidden corner of the garden hold? "You see," Jasper continued, his voice taking on an unusual, serious tone, "sometimes the best paths are found when we're not looking for them at all. Wouldn't you agree?" As they walked together, Jasper revealed hidden doorways in tree trunks, secret passages beneath flowering arches, and stepping stones that appeared only when sung to. Each discovery left Serena more amazed than the last. But why was the usually mischievous sprite being so helpful? "Rowan mentioned you had potential," Jasper explained, catching Serena's questioning look. "And while the old gnome can teach you the proper ways of magic, sometimes you need to learn how to think differently." He emphasized this by walking up a tree trunk as if it were flat ground. Their exploration was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Jasper, are you leading our new friend astray again?" Fern, the herbalist elf, emerged from behind a curtain of willow branches, her arms full of freshly picked herbs. "Me? Lead astray?" Jasper placed a hand over his heart in mock offense. "I'm showing her the garden's true nature, dear Fern. Besides, how else will she learn to expect the unexpected?" Fern shook her head with a knowing smile. "Just remember, Serena, Not all who wander are lost, but not all who lead know where they're going. As the day progressed, Jasper's lessons became increasingly intricate. He taught Serena how to listen to the whispers of the wind, how to spot the difference between ordinary mushroom circles and fairy gathering spots, and most importantly, how to trust her instincts. Magic isn't just about spells and potions, he explained while balancing on a beam of sunlight. It's about seeing the world differently. Have you ever wondered why some people can spot four-leaf clovers instantly while others search for hours? The question hung in the air as a shadow passed overhead. Thorn, the mysterious black cat, observed them from a nearby branch, his golden eyes reflecting something that might have been approval, or was it amusement? "Remember, little witch," Jasper said as the day drew to a close, "the garden has many faces. Rowan will show you the path of wisdom, but sometimes," he vanished and reappeared behind her, "you need to learn to dance with chaos to truly understand magic." As Serena made her way back to the garden's main path, she realized that Jasper's seemingly random tricks had taught her more than she initially thought. The garden felt different now, more alive, more mysterious, and somehow more welcoming. But what other secrets lay hidden in its depths? And why did she feel like Jasper's lessons were preparing her for something bigger? The setting sun cast long shadows through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, Luna's silhouette could be seen preparing for her nightly vigil. What adventures would the moonlit hours bring? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: Serena's magical education was proving to be anything but ordinary. What other hidden pathways await discovery in the Enchanted Garden? And more importantly, what role will Jasper's unorthodox teachings play in Serena's growing magical abilities? The answers, like the sprite himself, remain playfully just out of reach, waiting to be unveiled in the next chapter of this magical journey. As the golden afternoon light filtered through the canopy, Serena found herself drawn to the heart of the Enchanted Garden, where the magnificent willow tree stood sentinel. Her recent adventure with Jasper had left her with more questions than answers, and something told her that this ancient being might hold the key to understanding her place in this magical realm. Have you ever wondered why some trees whisper secrets while others stay silent? Luna's melodic voice drifted from above as she perched on one of Willow's lower branches, her wings casting prismatic patterns on the ground. Serena looked up, still catching her breath from following Jasper's hidden pathways. "I've never heard trees whisper before coming to this garden," she admitted, placing her hand gently on Willow's weathered bark. The moment her fingers touched the tree, a warm sensation coursed through her arm, and Willow's voice emerged, soft as rustling leaves yet clear as crystal. "Young witch, I've been waiting for you. The garden speaks of your arrival in whispers that have echoed through my rings for centuries." Rowan, who had been tending to nearby flowers with Fern, approached with knowing eyes. "Willow doesn't share her stories with just anyone, Serena. This is quite significant." "What do you mean?" Serena asked, her curiosity piqued. She settled herself between two massive roots that seemed to cradle her perfectly, as if they had grown specifically for this moment. Willow's leaves danced in a non-existent breeze as she began her tale. Long ago, when the garden was young and magic flowed more freely through the world, a prophecy was etched into my very core. It spoke of a time when the garden's magic would begin to fade, and of a young witch who would arrive with the power to restore its ancient connections. Thorn materialized from the shadows, his yellow eyes fixed intently on Serena. "Interesting timing, wouldn't you say?" he purred, circling the base of the tree. "Just as the flowers begin to lose their luster and the pathways grow dimmer." Serena's heart quickened. "Are you suggesting that I'm this witch from the prophecy? But I've only just discovered my powers. I can barely light a candle with magic, let alone restore an entire garden." Fern, who had been quietly listening while gathering herbs, spoke up. "Sometimes the greatest magic comes not from what we can do, but from who we are meant to become. I've noticed the plants respond differently to your presence, Serena. They reach for you just as they did for the garden's original keepers." "But why me?" Serena wondered aloud, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of this revelation. Willow's voice grew stronger, filling the air with ancient wisdom. "Let me share with you the story of the garden's creation, and perhaps you'll understand better. The tree began to weave a tale of how the garden had once been a nexus of magical energy, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, and where creatures of all realms could meet in harmony. As Willow spoke, her bark began to glow softly, and images formed in the air around them, scenes from the past showing the garden in its full glory. Serena watched, mesmerized, as she saw magical beings dancing through glittering pathways and flowers that bloomed with pure light. But something changed. Willow continued, her voice tinged with sadness. The connection began to weaken, and with it, the garden's magic. The prophecy speaks of one who carries the essence of both worlds, human and magical, who can bridge the gap and restore the balance. Jasper, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly appeared beside Serena. "That's why your magic feels different," he said thoughtfully. "It's not just witch magic, it's garden magic too." Luna floated down from her perch, her wings casting moonlit shadows despite the daylight. "The question isn't why you, dear Serena. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge?" Rowan nodded sagely. "The garden chose you, but the choice to accept this responsibility must be yours." Serena sat in silence for a moment, processing everything she had learned. The weight of the prophecy felt heavy on her shoulders, but something else stirred within her, a sense of rightness, a belonging that she had never felt before. "How do I begin?" she finally asked, looking up at Willow's vast canopy. "How does one restore magic to an entire garden?" Willow's leaves rustled with what sounded like laughter. "That, dear child, is what we must discover together. The path will reveal itself as you walk it. But first, you must learn to listen, not just to my whispers, but to the very heartbeat of the garden itself." As if in response to Willow's words, a gentle pulse began to thrum through the ground beneath them, like a distant heartbeat. Serena closed her eyes and felt it resonating with something deep within her own chest. Was this the garden's magic calling to her? The journey ahead won't be easy, Thorn warned, his tail twitching. There are those who would prefer the garden's magic remain dormant. "But you won't be alone," Fern added quickly, placing a reassuring hand on Serena's shoulder. "We're all here to help you understand your role in the garden's destiny." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through Willow's branches, Serena realized that her life had changed irrevocably. The simple curiosity that had led her to explore the Enchanted Garden had blossomed into something far more significant. She was no longer just a visitor learning about magic. She was part of an ancient prophecy, chosen to help restore balance to this magical realm. But what challenges awaited her on this path? And who were these mysterious forces that Thorn spoke of, who wished to keep the garden's magic suppressed? As these questions swirled in her mind, Serena knew one thing for certain. A real journey in the Enchanted Garden was only just beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final golden rays across the Enchanted Garden, Serena felt a familiar flutter of excitement in her chest. Tonight was different. She could sense it in the way the evening air sparkled with possibility. Luna had promised to teach her about moonlight magic during a rare celestial alignment, and the young witch could hardly contain her anticipation. "Are you ready for your midnight lesson?" Luna's melodious voice drifted through the twilight as she materialized, her wings casting prismatic reflections in the growing darkness. "The stars are aligning just for us tonight." Serena nodded eagerly, her hands clasped together. "I've been waiting all day. But Luna, why is tonight so special?" Before Luna could answer, a playful tune began to float through the air. Jasper appeared, sitting cross-legged on a mushroom, playing what appeared to be a flute made from a hollow reed. "Every good magic lesson needs the right atmosphere," he winked, his music weaving through the garden like silver threads. "Ah, perfect timing, Jasper." Luna smiled, her glow brightening. "Music helps channel moonlight magic. It's all about finding the right rhythm, you see." From nearby, Thorn observed the gathering with his usual air of mystery, his yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness. "The moon's magic is ancient and powerful," he purred, stretching lazily on a stone. "Be mindful of its gifts, young witch." As the moon rose higher, Fern emerged from her herb garden, carrying a basket of luminescent flowers. These moon blossoms only bloom during celestial alignments, she explained softly, scattering the petals in a circle around Serena. They'll help amplify the moon's energy. But how will I know what to do? Serena asked, looking uncertainly at the shimmering petals at her feet. Luna floated closer, her light casting gentle shadows. Close your eyes, dear one. Feel the moonlight on your skin. What does it tell you? Serena closed her eyes, aware of Jasper's melody becoming more ethereal. The moonlight felt like cool silk against her skin, and somehow she could sense its pattern, its dance. Without opening her eyes, she began to sway, her movements matching the rhythm of the celestial light. That's it, Luna exclaimed. The moonlight dance is the key to understanding its magic. Each step, each gesture connects you to the ancient power of the night sky. As Serena danced, strange and wonderful things began to happen around her. The moon blossoms at her feet started to float, creating a spiral of light that rose into the air. Nearby, Rowan watched with pride, nodding approvingly. She's a natural, he murmured to Willow, whose leaves rustled in agreement. But there's more to moonlight magic than just dancing, isn't there? Serena asked, opening her eyes to see the floating flowers around her. Luna's expression became thoughtful. Indeed, the dance is just the beginning. Moonlight magic is about transformation, about seeing beyond what's visible in daylight. Haven't you ever wondered why some truths only reveal themselves at night? Thorn's ears perked up at this. Speaking of revelations, he interjected mysteriously. There's something about tonight's alignment that feels significant. The music from Jasper's flute took on a more intense quality, and the moonlight seemed to pulse in response. Serena felt energy coursing through her, different from any magic she'd experienced before. What's happening? She gasped. The prophecy Willow spoke of, Luna explained, her wings shimmering with increased brilliance. It mentioned a witch who would learn to dance with moonbeams. But it wasn't just about dancing, was it, Willow? The ancient tree's leaves rustled in the night breeze. No, Willow's voice was soft but clear. The prophecy speaks of one who will bridge the gap between day and night, between the seen and unseen. Through the midnight dance, she will unlock secrets long forgotten. Serena's heart raced. But what secrets? What am I supposed to discover? Jasper's music swelled, and the floating moon blossoms began to spin faster. That's the fun part, he grinned, momentarily pausing his playing. The journey of discovery itself is the magic. As the night deepened, Serena continued to dance, guided by Luna's gentle instructions and Jasper's enchanting melody. With each step, she felt more connected to the garden's nighttime magic. But questions multiplied in her mind like stars in the sky. What secrets lay hidden in the moonlight? How would she know when she found them? And why did everyone seem to know more than they were telling? Fern gathered more moon blossoms, creating intricate patterns on the ground. Magic often reveals itself in unexpected ways, she offered quietly. Sometimes the questions are as important as the answers. The celestial alignment reached its peak, and for a moment, everything in the garden seemed to hold its breath. The moonlight concentrated into a brilliant beam, illuminating Serena as she danced. In that instant, she caught a glimpse of something, a flash of understanding that felt both new and anciently familiar. But before she could grasp its meaning, the moment passed, leaving her with a sense of both wonder and uncertainty. Luna's eyes twinkled knowingly, but she said nothing, leaving Serena to wonder. What had she just experienced, and what did it mean for her future in the Enchanted Garden? As the night's lesson drew to a close, one thing was certain. The midnight dance had changed something within Serena. But was it just the beginning of a greater transformation? Only time, and perhaps the next full moon, would tell. The morning dew still clung to the petals when Serena found Fern hunched over a patch of luminescent blooms, her delicate fingers trembling as she examined the wilting leaves. Oh dear, the herbalist elf whispered, her usually soft voice tinged with worry. Something was wrong, and Serena could feel it in the air, a heaviness that didn't belong in the Enchanted Garden. Fern, Serena called out gently, still feeling the lingering effects of last night's moonlight magic lesson with Luna. Is everything all right? Fern looked up, her emerald eyes wide with concern. Serena, thank goodness you're here. Something terrible is happening to the starlight blooms. See how their glow is fading? She gestured to the flowers, which should have been pulsing with a bright silvery light, but instead emitted only a weak flicker. As Serena knelt beside Fern, Thorn appeared from behind a nearby bush, his black fur gleaming in the morning light. The garden's magic is being drained, he announced cryptically, his tail twitching. Can't you feel it, and which? Indeed, Serena could. After her recent lessons, she'd become more attuned to the garden's magical essence, and something felt off balance. But what's causing it? She asked, watching as more flowers began to droop before her eyes. That's what we need to discover, came Rowan's voice as the wise gnome emerged from his mushroom house. This blight isn't natural. It's targeting the most magical plants first. Jasper materialized in a shower of leaves, his usual mischievous grin replaced by a serious expression. The starlight blooms are just the beginning. I've seen the same thing happening to the moonshade vines and the whisperbell patches. Fern's hands fluttered anxiously over the affected plants. These flowers are essential to the garden's magic. The starlight blooms help Luna channel her moonlight magic, and without them, she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Without them, the garden's defenses will weaken. Willow's branches swayed as she spoke, her leaves rustling with concern. I've seen something similar once before, centuries ago, when dark magic tried to infiltrate our sanctuary. Serena felt a chill run down her spine. Dark magic. But who would want to harm the garden? Thorn's yellow eyes narrowed. Not all who seek power have pure intentions, young witch. Perhaps someone has discovered the garden's secrets and wishes to claim them for themselves. As if in response to his words, a shadow passed over the sun, and more flowers began to wilt. Fern let out a small cry of distress, and Serena felt her heart ache for the gentle elf who had devoted her life to nurturing these magical plants. There must be something we can do, Serena insisted, remembering the moonlight magic Luna had taught her the night before. Luna showed me how to channel magical energy. Couldn't we use that somehow? Rowan stroked his beard thoughtfully. Perhaps. Fern, what if we combined your knowledge of the plants with Serena's growing magical abilities? Fern's eyes lit up with hope. The starlight blooms respond to pure magical energy. If we could create a protective barrier. But you'll need more than just magic, Jasper interjected, surprisingly serious. These plants are connected to the very essence of the garden. They need something special, something that combines all our unique abilities. As they discussed possibilities, Serena noticed something strange. Where her shadow fell across the wilting flowers, it seemed to perk up slightly. Could it be that her own magical energy, freshly charged from Luna's lessons, was naturally protecting them? Look, she exclaimed, moving her hand over different flowers and watching their response. They're reacting to my magic. Thorn's ears perked up. Interesting. It seems your moonlight training has left its mark, young witch. But sustaining that protection will require more than just your energy alone. Fern suddenly gasped, her eyes wide with realization. The ancient bloom. In the heart of the garden, there's a flower that blooms once every 100 years. It's said to have the power to purify any magical corruption. And if my calculations are correct, it's due to bloom tonight. But reaching the ancient bloom won't be easy, Willow warned. It's protected by the garden's oldest and most powerful enchantments. And with this mysterious blight spreading, the path will be more dangerous than ever. Serena looked at her gathered friends, the worried Fern, the wise Rowan, the unusually serious Jasper, the enigmatic Thorn, and the ancient Willow. She thought of Luna, who would join them when night fell, and felt a surge of determination. Then we'll face those dangers together, she declared. We can't let whoever's behind this destroy what you've all protected for so long. As if in response to her words, a soft breeze stirred the garden, carrying with it the sweet scent of hope. But questions lingered in the air. Who was behind this magical blight? Would they reach the ancient bloom in time? And what other challenges awaited them on their journey to the heart of the garden. The race against time had begun, and with each passing moment, more of the garden's magical plants succumbed to the mysterious force threatening their enchanted sanctuary. Serena knew that before this day was done, she would need every lesson she'd learned, every friend she'd made, and perhaps even some magic she didn't know she possessed. The evening air in the enchanted garden grew heavy with an unusual tension as Serena walked along the moonlit path, her mind still occupied with thoughts of the magical blight they'd fought alongside Fern. The silver light cast dancing shadows through the leaves, but something felt different tonight. Have you ever had that feeling when the familiar suddenly becomes strange? You sense it too, don't you? A smooth voice purred from the shadows. Thorn emerged, his black fur seeming to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. His golden eyes fixed on Serena with an intensity that made her pause. Thorn, what do you mean? Serena asked, watching as the mysterious cat gracefully wound his way between the flowering bushes. Something about his demeanor seemed more serious than usual, lacking his typical air of playful mystery. The garden speaks in whispers tonight, young witch, Thorn replied, his form shifting slightly as he moved, sometimes appearing more shadow than cat. The blight human Fern thought was merely a symptom of something far more troubling. Rowan appeared from behind an ancient oak, his usually cheerful face creased with concern. I was hoping we'd have more time before this conversation became necessary, the old gnome sighed, leaning on his staff. But Thorn is right. There's darkness stirring at the edges of our sanctuary. Luna descended from above, her wings casting scattered moonlight across the gathering. The balance shifts, she sang softly, her voice carrying a note of worry. The old barriers weaken with each passing light. What barriers? Serena asked, her heart beating faster. What's really happening to the garden? Thorn's form rippled, and suddenly he stood before them in his rarely seen human shape, tall and mysterious, still clad in shadows. Long ago, this garden was created as a sanctuary, a place where magic could flourish safely away from those who would misuse it. But there are forces that have always envied its power, waited for a chance to claim it. Jasper materialized nearby, unusually subdued. Even my tricks can't lighten this mood, can they? He attempted a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I felt them testing the boundaries, searching for ways in. The ancient voice of Willow creaked through the evening air. In all my years I have seen cycles of light and dark, but this feels different. The very roots of the garden tremble with unease. Fern emerged from her herb patch, clutching a bundle of wilting protective herbs. The plants know it too, she whispered. They're trying to warn us, but their voices grow weaker each day. Thorn moved closer to Serena, his golden eyes seeming to peer into her very soul. You weren't brought to this garden by chance, young witch. Your discovery of your powers, your arrival here, it was all part of something greater. But now we must ask, are you ready for what comes next? What do you mean? Serena's voice trembled slightly. What's coming? The shadows gather, Thorn explained, his voice low and urgent. They seek what lies at the heart of this garden, the source of its magic. And they know that now is the time to strike, where the garden's defenses are at their weakest in centuries. Luna fluttered closer, her light providing comfort in the growing darkness. But why now? What's changed? Thorn's expression grew grave. Because they sense what we all do, that Serena's arrival has shifted the balance of power. Her presence here has awakened old magics, and with them, old enemies. Rowan stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Serena's shoulder. We've watched you grow into your powers, child. You've learned our ways, helped heal our plants, and earned your place among us. But now we must ask more of you. The question isn't just whether you're ready, Thorn continued, his form flickering between cat and human. It's whether you're willing to stand with us against what's coming. The garden has chosen you, Serena. But will you choose to fight for it? The weight of their words hung in the air as Serena looked around at the faces of those who had become her family. Rowan's wisdom, Luna's ethereal grace, Jasper's barely contained energy, Fern's gentle concern, Willow's ancient strength, and Thorn's mysterious intensity. What do we do? Serena asked, her voice growing stronger with determination, How do we protect the garden? Thorn's lips curved into a slight smile. First, you need to understand what we're truly protecting. The garden's heart holds secrets even I haven't fully grasped. But before we can face what's coming, you need to know the truth about your role here, about why the garden called to you. And that truth, he continued, his form beginning to fade back into shadow, begins with a story as old as the garden itself. Are you ready to hear it, and which? Because once you do, there's no turning back. The night seemed to hold its breath as Serena stood among her magical companions, facing a choice that would change everything. What secrets lay in the garden's past? What role was she destined to play? And most importantly, would she be strong enough to face what was coming? As Thorn's warning hung in the air, the garden itself seemed to whisper with anticipation, waiting for Serena's answer to a question that would set in motion events beyond her wildest dreams. What would you do standing at the threshold of such a moment? The morning dew still clung to the petals of the wilting flowers as Serena stood at the edge of the garden's dying section. Her heart ached at the sight of the browning leaves and withered stems that had once been vibrant with life. The young witch twisted her fingers nervously, aware that this would be her first significant test of magical ability. "Are you certain I'm ready for this, Rowan?" Serena asked, her voice trembling slightly as she turned to the wise old gnome standing beside her. Rowan stroked his long silver beard thoughtfully before responding, "My dear, sometimes readiness isn't about perfect preparation, but about necessity. The garden needs you now, and you need this experience." He gestured to the deteriorating flora before them. "What do you feel when you look at this section?" Before Serena could answer, Jasper materialized from behind a nearby shrub, his usual mischievous grin replaced with an uncharacteristic seriousness. "The garden's never looked this bad before," he commented, floating closer to examine a particularly sickly rose bush. "Even my best tricks couldn't cheer these plants up." Fern, who had been quietly gathering herbs nearby, approached with concern etched on her delicate features. "The illness is spreading faster than any natural decay should," she observed, gently touching a withered leaf that crumbled at her touch. "Whatever magic we use must be applied soon." Serena closed her eyes, remembering Thorn's warning from the previous day about dark forces threatening the garden. Could this be what he meant? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. "The spell you'll be attempting today is ancient magic," Rowan explained, drawing everyone's attention. "It's called a renewal charm, and it requires not just magical ability, but a deep connection with the garden itself." As if responding to Rowan's words, Willow's branches swayed despite the still air. "I remember the first time this spell was cast," the ancient tree's voice whispered through rustling leaves. "It was centuries ago during another time of great need. The key lies not in the words themselves, but in the intent behind them." Luna, who had been unusually present despite the daylight, fluttered down to perch on a nearby branch. "Remember, young one," she said in her melodious voice, "magic flows like moonlight on water. You must guide it, not force it." Serena took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. What if I make it worse? What if I'm not strong enough? Doubt is the enemy of magic. Thorn's voice came unexpectedly as he emerged from the shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming. "But remember what I told you about the darkness approaching. This spell may be more important than you realize." Rowan nodded gravely and began instructing Serena on the proper stance. "Place your hands palm down over the earth," he directed. "Feel the garden's pulse beneath your fingers. Every living thing has a rhythm, a song of its own. Your task is to harmonize with it." As Serena followed his instructions, she became aware of a faint thrumming beneath her palms. Was this what Rowan meant? The sensation grew stronger as she focused, like a heartbeat struggling to maintain its rhythm. "Now repeat after me," Rowan said softly, "but remember, the words are merely a channel for your intent. Focus on your desire to heal, to restore, to renew." As Serena began chanting the ancient words, something extraordinary happened. The air around her began to shimmer with an ethereal light. Jasper stopped his fidgeting. Fern gasped softly, and even Luna's wings stilled in anticipation. But halfway through the spell, Serena felt resistance, something dark and cold pushing back against her magic. Her hands began to tremble, and doubt crept into her mind. Was she doing it wrong? Was she making things worse? "Don't stop now." Thorn's voice cut through her uncertainty. "What you're feeling is exactly what I warned about. Push through it." Rowan's steady presence beside her provided anchor as she fought against the mysterious force. "Remember why you're doing this," he encouraged. "Connect with the garden's essence. Let it guide you." Serena thought about all the magical moments she'd experienced in this garden, all the friendships she formed. She thought about the joy it brought to others, the balance it maintained in the magical world. With renewed determination, she pushed her magic harder. The resistance suddenly gave way, like a dam breaking, and pure, healing energy flowed through her into the earth. The effect was immediate and stunning. Colors began returning to the withered plants, stems straightened, and new buds sprouted before their eyes. When it was done, Serena swayed on her feet, exhausted but triumphant. The garden section was restored, perhaps even more vibrant than before. But questions lingered in her mind. What was that dark resistance she felt? Was it connected to Thorn's warning? Rowan helped her sit down on a nearby stone bench, his expression both proud and concerned. "You've done well, Serena," he said, "but I fear this is just the beginning. The force you encountered during the spell, it shouldn't have been there." Luna fluttered closer, her wings casting dancing shadows. "The garden's magic is changing," she observed cryptically. "The question is, are we changing with it or against it?" As the others gathered around to congratulate her, Serena couldn't shake the feeling that her first major spell had revealed more questions than answers. What other challenges lay ahead? And more importantly, was she ready to face them? The silver moonlight cascaded through the garden's canopy as Serena sat beside the ancient willow tree, still processing the events of her first successful spell. Her hands tingled with residual magic, a reminder of the power she had channeled to heal the withering corner of the garden. But something felt different tonight. The air was thick with anticipation, and even the usually chatty Jasper was unusually quiet. "You feel it too, don't you?" Thorn appeared suddenly, his black fur gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. "The garden is whispering warnings tonight." Serena nodded, watching as the moonflowers began to open their petals, releasing a soft, ethereal glow. "Ever since the healing spell, I've been more attuned to the garden's rhythms. Something's coming, isn't it?" Before Thorn could respond, Luna materialized in a shower of starlight, her wings casting dancing shadows on the ground. Her usual playful demeanor was replaced with an expression of concern. "Young witch," she addressed Serena, her voice carrying on the night breeze, "your first spell was but a preparation for what lies ahead." Rowan emerged from behind a cluster of mushrooms, his usually bright eyes clouded with worry. "Luna, is it time?" "Indeed, old friend," Luna replied, her wings shimmering as she circled around Serena. "The darkness approaches faster than we anticipated. She must know." Fern, who had been quietly tending to her herbs nearby, dropped her watering can with a clatter. "But she's only just begun to understand her powers. Surely we can wait." "Time is a luxury we no longer possess," Luna said softly, turning to face Serena directly. "Listen carefully, young one, for in these words lies the key to our salvation. When shadow meets light of the garden's heart, 3 elements must play their part. What flows like time but burns like fire? What grows in darkness but light does inspire? What sleeps by day but wakes by night? The answer 3 shall set all right." Serena repeated the riddle under her breath, trying to commit each line to memory. "But what does it mean? What darkness are you talking about?" Jasper, who had been uncharacteristically silent, piped up. "Haven't you noticed the edges of the garden growing dimmer? The shadows lasting longer than they should? Willow's leaves rustled ominously. I have seen this before, centuries ago. A darkness that seeks to consume all magic, to turn this sanctuary into a realm of shadows." "But why me?" Serena asked, her voice small against the weight of this revelation. "I've only just learned my first spell." "Sometimes," Rowan said gently, "the most powerful magic lies not in experience, but in the purity of intention and the strength of heart. You healed that corner of the garden not because you knew the most powerful spells, but because you truly cared. Luna nodded in agreement. The riddle I've given you is ancient magic, passed down through generations of guardians. Each line holds a truth that you must uncover, but more importantly, understand. Can't you just tell me the answers? Serena pleaded, feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility. Thorn stretched lazily, though his eyes remained alert. Magic doesn't work that way, young witch. Some truths must be discovered, not given. As if in response to their conversation, a cool wind swept through the garden, causing the lanterns to flicker ominously. In the distance, the edges of the garden seemed to blur, as if being slowly erased by an unseen force. How long do I have? Serena asked, watching the encroaching darkness with growing concern. Until the next full moon, Luna replied. 3 nights from now, when the moon reaches its peak, you must have your answers ready. Fern approached Serena, pressing a small pouch of herbs into her hand. For clarity of mind, she whispered, "You'll need it." As the night deepened, Serena found herself surrounded by her unusual family of magical beings, each offering their own form of support. Jasper promised to help her explore every corner of the garden for clues. Willow offered to share any relevant memories that might help solve the riddle. Even Thorn, typically aloof, agreed to keep watch for any signs of the approaching darkness. But questions still swirled in Serena's mind. What were the 3 elements Luna spoke of? How could something flow like time yet burn like fire? And most importantly, would she be able to solve this riddle in time to save the only place she'd ever truly felt at home? As the moon climbed higher in the sky, Serena realized that this was more than just a test of her magical abilities. It was a test of everything she'd learned about friendship, courage, and believing in herself. The garden had given her a home and a purpose. Now it was her turn to protect it. But as she looked at the concerned faces around her, one question burned brighter than all the others. What would happen if she failed? The moonlight cast dancing shadows through Willow's ancient branches as Serena stood before the wise tree, her mind still wrestling with Luna's cryptic riddle. The night air hung heavy with anticipation, and somewhere in the distance, an owl's lonely call echoed through the enchanted garden. Luna's riddle speaks of shadows that consume light, Serena began, her voice trembling slightly. But I can't piece it together. Willow, you've been here longer than anyone else. Have you seen anything like this before? The ancient tree's leaves rustled softly, almost like a whisper of remembrance. Ah, young witch, Willow's voice creaked like old wood in the wind. Your question stirs memories from deep within my roots. There was a time centuries ago when darkness threatened to swallow our garden whole. Rowan, who had been quietly standing nearby, stepped forward, his gnome eyes twinkling with recognition. I remember that time, though I was but a young guardian then. Tell her, Willow. Tell her what we faced. As Willow began to speak, Jasper materialized on one of the lower branches, for once showing no signs of his usual mischief. Even Thorn, the mysterious black cat, emerged from the shadows to listen, his golden eyes fixed intently on the ancient tree. It was during the great eclipse, Willow began, where the balance between light and dark magic wavered dangerously. The darkness came not as a storm or a beast, but as a creeping shadow that fed on fear and doubt. Much like what Luna's riddle warns of now. Fern, who had been tending to her herbs nearby, drew closer, her delicate features etched with concern. But how did the garden survive, she asked, voicing the question that burned in everyone's minds. Willow's leaves shimmered with an ethereal glow as the memory unfolded. There was a witch, much like you, Serena. Her name was Aurora, and she discovered that the darkness had a weakness. But before I reveal this crucial detail, you must understand the nature of what we face. What do you think gives darkness its power? Serena furrowed her brow in concentration. Fear, she ventured. Partly, Willow responded. But what else? Isolation, came Luna's melodious voice as she descended from the night sky, her wings casting silver light across the gathering. The darkness grows stronger when it separates us, doesn't it, Willow? The ancient tree's branches swayed in agreement. Aurora discovered that the darkness fed on division and lonely hearts. It would whisper doubts, turn friend against friend, until each soul stood alone, easy prey for the shadows to consume. But how did she stop it? Serena pressed, feeling the weight of history pressing against the present moment. Willow's voice grew stronger, filled with the power of memory. Aurora realized that the garden's magic wasn't just in its plants or creatures, but in the bonds between them. She created a spell, not of light, as many had tried before, but of connection. She wove together the essence of every being in the garden, the wisdom of the trees, the cleverness of the sprites, the ancient knowledge of the gnomes, the healing power of the elves, and the mysterious magic of the fae. Thorn's tail twitched thoughtfully. So the solution lies not in fighting the darkness directly, but in strengthening our bonds. Perhaps, Willow mused, but there's more to the story. Aurora's spell came with a price, one that she willingly paid. The question is, are you ready to hear what that price was, Serena? And more importantly, are you prepared to face a similar choice? The young witch felt all eyes turn to her. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Before she could respond, a cold wind swept through the garden, and the shadows at the edges of their gathering seemed to deepen. The darkness approaches faster than before, Luna warned, a silvery light flickering slightly. Serena must decide soon. But first, Willow interjected, there's one more crucial detail about Aurora's spell that you need to know. It involves the heart of the garden itself, and a secret that's been kept for centuries. Would you like to hear it, Serena? Remember, once you know this truth, there's no turning back. The young witch looked around at her gathered friends, Rowan's steadfast presence, Luna's ethereal grace, Jasper's barely contained energy, Fern's gentle concern, and Thorn's watchful gaze. Each of them had taught her something valuable since she discovered her powers, and now they all waited for her answer. What price did Aurora pay to save the garden? And more importantly, what choice would Serena make when faced with the same darkness? The answers lay in Willow's next words, but were they ready for the truth they would reveal? The morning dew still clung to the emerald leaves as Serena followed Jasper through the winding paths of the Enchanted Garden. The mischievous forest sprite darted ahead, his usual playful demeanor replaced by an unusual sense of purpose. What could be so important that it had transformed the typically jovial trickster into such a serious guide? Come on, Serena, you're slower than Willow on a windless day. Jasper called back, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and impatience. Serena quickened her pace, her witch's robes catching on brambles as she hurried to keep up. Jasper, where exactly are you taking me? Serena asked, pushing a low-hanging branch aside. We've passed the same mushroom circle 3 times now. The sprite turned with a knowing smile, his eyes twinkling with that familiar hint of mischief. Have we really? Or perhaps the garden is dancing around us, leading us exactly where we need to go. He waggled his eyebrows mysteriously, causing Serena to roll her eyes good-naturedly. As they continued their journey, Thorn appeared suddenly on a nearby stump, his black fur gleaming in the filtered sunlight. Ah, seeking the old magic, are we? The shape-shifting cat purred, his tail swishing thoughtfully. Remember, young witch, not all that glimmers in the garden wishes to be found. Before Serena could ask what he meant, Thorn had vanished again, leaving only his cryptic warning hanging in the air. Why did the cat always have to speak in riddles? And what did he mean by old magic? Their path suddenly opened into a clearing that Serena had never seen before, despite her many explorations of the garden. The air here felt different, thicker, more alive with possibility. Ancient stone archways, half covered in moss and morning glory, formed a perfect circle around a small grove. In the center stood a pool of water, so still it looked like liquid silver. Welcome to the heart of the garden, Jasper announced, his voice uncharacteristically sullen. Few know of this place, even fewer are invited here. It's beautiful, Serena breathed, taking in the sight. But why bring me here? A familiar voice answered from behind them. Because, dear child, Your magic called for it. Rowan emerged from behind one of the archways, his gnome's beard glinting with dewdrops. The garden speaks to those who are ready to listen, and it has been whispering your name. Fern, who had been so quietly tending to some luminous flowers that Serena hadn't noticed her, looked up with a gentle smile. The ancient ones planted their most powerful magic here, she explained, her voice soft as a spring breeze. Every plant, every stone, holds memories of spells long forgotten. As if responding to Fern's words, the pool in the center began to ripple. Though there was no wind, Serena stepped closer, drawn by an inexplicable force. In the water's surface, she saw fleeting images. Witches and wizards of old, performing spells she had never seen before, their magic weaving patterns of light and shadow. "But why show me this now?" Serena asked, turning to her companions. "What am I supposed to learn here?" Luna, who had appeared silently atop one of the archways, her wings catching the light like stained glass, smiled mysteriously. "Perhaps the better question is, what are you ready to learn? The hidden grove reveals its secrets only to those who approach with both courage and humility." Willow's branches swayed gently overhead, though Serena hadn't noticed the ancient tree's presence until now. In my many years, the tree's gentle voice rustled. "I have watched countless seekers come to this place. Some found what they sought, others left with more questions than answers. But all were changed by what they discovered here." Jasper, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, hopped onto a nearby stone. "The real fun part." He grinned, some of his usual mischief returning. "You never know what the grove might show you. Sometimes it's a long-lost spell. Sometimes it's a truth about yourself you never knew. Once, it showed me where I'd hidden my favorite acorn collection, though I'm pretty sure that was just the grove having a laugh." Serena approached the pool again, this time with more purpose. The surface rippled once more, but instead of ancient witches, she saw something else. Something that made her gasp in surprise. What could it be that caused such a reaction? What secrets did the hidden grove hold for her? As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting dappled shadows through the canopy above, Serena realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her magical journey. The hidden grove had called to her, but why? What ancient magic lay dormant here, waiting to be rediscovered? And more importantly, was she ready for the responsibilities that came with such knowledge? The answers to these questions would have to wait, as the grove had its own timeline for revealing its secrets. For now, Serena stood in this sacred space, surrounded by her magical companions, feeling the pulse of ancient power beneath her feet, and knowing that her path as a witch had just taken an unexpected but significant turn. The morning dew still clung to the leaves as Serena followed Jasper back from the hidden grove, her mind buzzing with questions about the ancient magic they had discovered. Something else caught her attention: the unusual urgency in Fern's movements as the herbalist elf darted between the herb beds, her normally peaceful demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. "Fern," Serena called out softly, "is everything all right?" The gentle elf startled, nearly dropping the bundle of herbs in her arms. Her large, emerald eyes darted around before settling on Serena. "Oh, Serena, I've been hoping to speak with you." She hesitated, wringing her hands. "But perhaps we should wait for Rowan." Jasper, who had been floating nearby, performed an aerial somersault. "I'll fetch the old gnome," he announced, zipping away before anyone could protest. While they waited, Serena noticed how Fern kept glancing at the moon dial in the center of her herb garden. What could have the usually composed elf so worried? Before she could ask, Rowan arrived with Jasper, followed by Luna, who had been drawn to the gathering despite the early hour. "My dear Fern," Rowan said, his ancient eyes kind but concerned. "What troubles you?" Fern took a deep breath. "Do you remember the stories about the moonshade lotus?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Luna's silvery wings flickered with recognition, while Rowan's expression grew serious. "The guardian flower?" he asked. "I thought it was lost centuries ago." "What's the moonshade lotus?" Serena couldn't help but interrupt, her curiosity piqued. Fern gestured for everyone to follow her to a small wooden bench near her cottage. As they settled, Thorn appeared from nowhere, as he often did when important matters were being discussed, and perched on a nearby stone. The moonshade lotus, Fern began, her voice growing stronger, is a magical plant that blooms only during the alignment of 3 full moons. Its petals possess the power to create an impenetrable barrier of natural magic. She paused, looking at each of them meaningfully. A barrier that could protect our garden from any dark forces that might threaten it. Serena leaned forward, but you said it was lost. That's what everyone believes, Fern replied, a slight tremor in her voice. But I've been keeping a secret. Years ago, I found a single seed in an ancient text hidden within Willow's roots. I've been nurturing it in secret, waiting for the right time, the right conditions. And, Jasper prompted, unusually still for once. The triple full moon alignment is approaching, Luna interjected, her silvery voice carrying a note of excitement. In 3 days' time. Thorn's tail twitched. But there's more to this story, isn't there, Fern? He asked, his golden eyes narrowing. Fern nodded slowly. The seed must be planted in soil mixed with 3 specific ingredients. Morning dew from the hidden grove, moonlight caught in a spider's web, and she hesitated, a tear from a pure-hearted witch. All eyes turned to Serena, who felt her heart skip a beat. Could she be the witch they needed? But that's not all, Fern continued, her voice dropping even lower. The planting must be done at midnight in the center of the garden, and she swallowed hard. The dark forces will be drawn to the ceremony. They'll try to stop us. A heavy silence fell over the group. Rowan stroked his beard thoughtfully. So we must not only gather these ingredients, but also protect the planting ceremony from whatever darkness might come. Yes, Fern confirmed, and we have only 3 days. Serena felt a mix of excitement and fear flutter in her stomach. But how will we know what these dark forces are? How can we prepare? Thorn's tail swished mysteriously. Perhaps the better question is, how did you really find that seed, Fern? And why have you waited until now to tell us? The herbalist elf's face paled slightly, and she looked away. What other secrets was she keeping? And would they have time to uncover them before the triple full moon? Luna's wings cast dancing shadows on the ground as she spoke. Time grows short, and the garden's future hangs in the balance. What say you, young witch? Will you help us with this task? As Serena looked around at the faces of her magical friends, she knew this would be their greatest challenge yet. But something else nagged at her mind. Why did Fern seem more afraid of sharing her secrets than of the dark forces themselves? The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, and somewhere in the distance, Willow's leaves rustled with untold stories. Would they have time to uncover all the truths hidden within the garden's depths before the triple full moon? And more importantly, would they be ready for whatever darkness awaited them? The moonlight cast long shadows across the enchanted garden as Serena and her companions gathered near Willow's ancient trunk. The revelation of Fern's rare protective plant had stirred something in the usually aloof Thorn, who had been watching their discussion with unusually intense golden eyes. There's something different about you tonight, Thorn, Serena observed, noticing how the black cat's fur seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly gleam. You've been acting strange ever since Fern mentioned the starlight bloom. Thorn's tail twitched, and for the first time since Serena had known him, uncertainty flickered across his feline features. Perhaps, he purred, it's time for some truths to come to light. His voice carried a weight that made everyone lean in closer. Luna, who had been floating nearby, sprinkled some of her moonlit dust around Thorn. The night reveals what daylight conceals, she sang in her melodious voice. Doesn't it, old friend? Rowan stepped forward, his ancient eyes twinkling with recognition. I wondered how long you would keep up this charade, old companion. Serena looked between them confused. What do you mean? What charade? As if in response to her question, the air around Thorn began to shimmer and twist. His small feline form started to glow with an intense blue light that forced everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, where the black cat had once sat now stood a tall, elegant figure with silver-streaked black hair and robes that seemed to be made from the night sky itself. By the garden's magic, Jasper exclaimed, nearly falling off his favorite mushroom perch. "You're the lost guardian." Thorn, now in his true form, nodded solemnly. "I am indeed, though lost might not be the most accurate description. Hidden would be more appropriate." Serena's mind raced with questions. But why? Why hide as a cat all this time? Thorn's human features carried the same mysterious expression his cat form often wore. "The garden has faced many threats over the centuries, young witch. Sometimes the best way to protect something is to watch from the shadows, to be underestimated and overlooked." Willow's leaves rustled with excitement. "I remember when you first took this duty, Thorn. It was during the Great Shadow War, wasn't it?" "Indeed, old friend," Thorn replied, placing a hand on Willow's bark. "When dark forces threatened to overtake the garden, I made the choice to become its secret guardian. As a cat, I could move freely, observe everything, and protect our sanctuary without drawing attention." Fern, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward with a starlight bloom cradled in her arms. "Is that why you've been so interested in this plant? You knew its true purpose all along?" A smile crossed Thorn's face, the first genuine smile Serena had ever seen from him. "The starlight bloom isn't just a protective plant, Fern. It's a key to unlocking ancient magic that has been dormant in the garden for centuries. Magic that we might soon need." "What do you mean?" Serena asked, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Are we in danger?" "The signs have been there for those who know where to look," Thorn explained, waving his hand to create a shimmering image in the air. "The withering of the bandery roses, the unusual patterns in the starlight, the restlessness of the shadow creatures at the garden's edge. They all point to something approaching, something that hasn't been seen since the days of the Great Shadow War." Rowan stroked his beard thoughtfully. "So that's why you've chosen to reveal yourself now. You believe history is about to repeat itself." "Not repeat," Thorn corrected, "but rhyme. The threats we face are never exactly the same, but they echo through time like ripples in a pond. And this time, we have something we didn't have before." He turned his gaze to Serena. "Me?" Serena's voice wavered slightly. "But I'm still learning. I barely understand my powers." Luna floated down to rest on Serena's shoulder. "Sometimes the newest flower in the garden brings the strongest magic, Tier 1. Why do you think Thorn has been watching over you so carefully?" The revelation struck Serena like a bolt of lightning. All those times she felt Thorn's eyes on her while practicing spells, all the mysterious appearances just when she needed guidance, it hadn't been mere coincidence. "You've been teaching me," she realized, "in your own way, through all those cryptic hints and perfectly timed appearances." Thorn nodded, approval warming his mysterious eyes. "And you've learned more than you realize, young witch. But now, with what's coming, we must accelerate your training. The garden will need all of us, the wisdom of Rowan, the memory of Willow, the healing of Fern, the trickery of Jasper, the light of Luna, and your growing power, Serena." As if responding to his words, the garden itself seemed to pulse with energy. The moonflowers bloomed brighter, the evening breeze carried whispers of ancient magic, and even the shadows seemed to dance with purpose. "So," Jasper piped up, breaking the momentary silence, "does this mean you'll stop leaving dead mice on my mushrooms?" Because that was really starting to get old. The tension broke as everyone laughed, even Thorn, whose chuckle carried the warmth of summer nights. But beneath the moment of levity, questions hum in the air like morning mist. What was coming? How would they face it? And what other secrets did the enchanted garden hold? As the night deepened around them, Serena realized that Thorn's revelation wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The true test of their strength and their unity was yet to come. The full moon hung like a silver pendant in the velvet sky as Serena made her way through the misty paths of the enchanted garden. The events of the previous day still weighed heavily on her mind. Thorn's revelation of his true identity as a former guardian of the garden had changed everything. But tonight, something even more pressing demanded attention. "Are you certain about what you saw?" Serena whispered to Jasper, who floated beside her, his usual playful demeanor replaced by an unusual seriousness. "As certain as dewdrops at dawn, the sprite replied, his voice tight with concern. The shadows at the garden's edge, they're moving on their own. Not like normal shadows should. The clearing ahead glowed with an ethereal light as they approached the ancient willow tree where the council was to gather. Willow's branches swayed gently, though there was no wind, creating a cascade of silvery leaves that illuminated the gathering space below. Luna was already there, her wings casting prismatic reflections across the grass. Beside her stood Rowan, his weathered face more grave than Serena had ever seen it. Fern nervously arranged and rearranged her healing herbs in a small basket, while Thorn, now known to all in his true form as a tall, elegant figure with cat-like eyes, stood apart from the others, his gaze fixed on the distant darkness. The midnight hour approaches. Willow's voice rustled through her leaves. We must begin. But what exactly are we facing? Serena asked, voicing the question that had been burning in everyone's minds. The darkness, Jasper mentioned. What is it? Rowan stepped forward, his ancient eyes reflecting the moonlight. It's what we've feared for centuries. The void. A force that seeks to unmake all magic, to return the garden to ordinary earth and stone. Luna's wings dimmed slightly as she spoke, her usual riddles giving way to direct speech for once. We've kept it at bay through the balance of our combined magic, but something has changed. The barriers are weakening. Could it be connected to Thorn's return? Fenton asked softly, her fingers nervously weaving stems of lavender together. All eyes turned to the former guardian, who finally turned to face the group. Perhaps, he acknowledged, my return may have disturbed something ancient, something we thought long buried. Serena felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean, long buried? There's a story, Willow's leaves whispered, of a time before the garden, when this place was a battleground between light and shadow. The garden itself was created as a seal, a living lock to keep the darkness contained. But why now? Jasper darted around anxiously. What's changed? Luna's silver light pulsed as she spoke. Perhaps it's not what's changed, but who has arrived. A gaze fell meaningfully on Serena. Me? Serena's heart skipped a beat. But I'm still learning to control my magic. How could I have anything to do with this? Rowan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sometimes the newest flower can change the entire garden's composition. Your arrival has brought fresh magic, different magic. The old barriers may not recognize it. Then what can we do? Serena asked, looking around at the gathered faces of her magical friends. How do we stop this darkness? Thorn stepped into the center of the circle, his presence commanding attention. We don't stop it. We transform it. But it will require something from each of us, and most importantly, something from you, Serena. From me, what could I possibly offer? Luna's wings shimmered as she moved closer. Your perspective, young witch. You see the garden with new eyes, untainted by centuries of tradition. Sometimes the freshest view can reveal solutions hidden from those who have looked too long. The midnight bell tolled somewhere in the distance, its sound eerily muffled by the thickening mist. The council members exchanged worried glances as shadows seemed to creep closer to their circle of light. We must act soon. Willow's voice carried an urgency that made her leaves tremble. The question is, are we ready to face what comes next? Serena looked at each of her friends in turn. Rowan's wisdom, Luna's mystery, Jasper's spirit, Fern's gentleness, Thorn's power, and Willow's knowledge. Together, they had taught her so much about magic and herself. Now, it seemed, it was time to put those lessons to the test. Whatever we do, she said firmly, we do it together. But first, I need to understand something. She turned to Thorn, her eyes filled with determination. You said the garden is a seal. What exactly is it sealing? And what happens if that seal breaks? The answer to that question would have to wait, as suddenly the moonlight dimmed and a cold wind swept through the clearing. The darkness they had feared was no longer content to wait at the edges of their sanctuary. The midnight council's time for discussion was over. The moment for action had arrived. But what action should they take? And more importantly, what role would Serena play in the garden's desperate hour of need? The answers lay somewhere in the shadows that now crept ever closer to their sacred circle, threatening to unravel the very magic that held their enchanted worlds together. The silver light of the full moon bathed the enchanted garden in an ethereal glow as Serena stood in the center of the moonlit clearing, her heart racing with anticipation. Luna's wings sparkled like diamonds as she gracefully descended from the starlit sky, her presence bringing a sense of calm to the tense atmosphere that had lingered since the emergency council meeting. Are you ready to begin your journey into moonlight magic, dear Serena? Luna's melodious voice carried through the night air. After what we learned at the council, time is of the essence. Serena nodded, remembering the grave faces of her garden friends during the midnight gathering. I'm ready, Luna, but I'm also scared. What if I'm not strong enough to help protect the garden? From nearby, Rowan's reassuring voice chimed in. Fear is natural, young witch, but remember that the garden chose you for a reason. The wise old gnome settled himself on a mushroom to observe the lesson, his ancient eyes twinkling with encouragement. Luna began circling Serena, leaving trails of silvery light in her wake. Moonlight magic is different from the spells you've learned so far. It requires not just skill, but a deep connection to the night itself. Can you feel the moon's energy flowing through the garden? Serena closed her eyes, focusing on the sensation Luna described. To her surprise, she could feel a gentle pulse, like a heartbeat made of starlight, running through everything around her. I can feel it. It's like music without sound. Precisely. Luna clapped her hands, creating small bursts of silver sparks. Now hold out your hands and let that energy flow through you. As Serena followed Luna's instructions, Jasper materialized on a nearby branch, unusually serious. You know, the sprite Muse, I've never seen Luna teach anyone before. This must be really important. Willow's leaves rustled softly in agreement. In all my centuries, moonlight magic has only been taught in times of great need. The darkness we sensed at the council meeting, it's unlike anything I've experienced before. Thorn, who had been watching silently from the shadows, stepped into the moonlight. The question is, would it be enough? His yellow eyes gleamed mysteriously as he observed Serena's training. Luna guided Serena through various exercises, teaching her to channel moonlight into protective barriers and healing energy. Moonlight magic is about balance, she explained. It can both protect and nurture, shield and reveal. What do you think makes it so special, Serena? As Serena pondered this question, Fern approached quietly, carrying a basket of luminescent herbs. These might help, she offered shyly. They're moon-blessed herbs that enhance magical abilities. Hours passed as Serena practiced, her confidence growing with each successful spell. The garden seemed to respond to her efforts, glowing brighter when she channeled the moonlight correctly. But questions lingered in her mind. Why was this magic so crucial now? What were they truly preparing for? Luna, Serena asked during a brief rest. At the council meeting, you mentioned that the darkness was searching for something. What is it looking for? Luna exchanged meaningful glances with Rowan and Thorn before responding. That, dear Serena, is something you'll need to discover as your powers grow. But remember, sometimes the questions we ask are as important as the answers we seek. As the night deepened, Serena's magic grew stronger. She learned to weave moonbeams into protective shields, to use starlight for healing, and to communicate with the nocturnal creatures of the garden. Each new skill brought both excitement and responsibility. The garden's magic is changing, Willow observed thoughtfully. It's adapting, preparing. But for what? Jasper, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly perked up. Hey, does anyone else feel that? The air feels different. Indeed, there was a subtle shift in the garden's energy. The moonlight seemed to pulse more strongly, and the shadows of the garden's edges appeared deeper than before. Luna's expression grew serious as she noticed these changes. Serena, Luna said urgently, there's one more thing you must learn tonight. The most important aspect of moonlight magic isn't the spells themselves, but understanding when and how to use them. What do you think that means? As Serena contemplated this question, the garden held its breath. The answer she would find might determine not just her future as a witch, but the fate of the enchanted garden itself. What mysteries still lurked in the shadows? What role would each of them play in the coming challenges? The night was far from over, and as Luna continued her teachings, one thing became clear. This was just the beginning of a much larger adventure. The moonlight magic Serena was learning would be essential for whatever lay ahead. But would it be enough to face the growing darkness? As dawn approached, Luna's final words echoed through the garden. Remember, Serena, the strongest magic comes not from power alone, but from the heart that wields it. Are you ready to embrace your true potential? The question hung in the air like morning mist, leaving readers wondering what challenges await Serena and her friends in the Enchanted Garden, and how this newfound knowledge of moonlight magic would shape their future adventures. The morning dew still clung to the Enchanted Garden's leaves as Serena made her way to the ancient oak tree where Rowan usually spent his mornings. Her heart raced with anticipation, knowing that today wasn't just any ordinary day of training. After mastering Luna's moonlight magic the previous night, Rowan had announced it was time for her final test. "Are you ready, young witch?" Rowan's gravelly voice called out from beneath the oak's sprawling branches. The wise old gnome sat cross-legged on a moss-covered stone, his eyes twinkling with both concern and pride. Serena took a deep breath, remembering Luna's teachings from the night before. "I think so," she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. How could anyone truly be ready for something they knew nothing about? "Think so." Jasper materialized beside her, making her jump. "Come on, Serena. Where's that confidence I've seen you build over these past weeks?" The forest sprite's playful grin was infectious, and Serena couldn't help but smile back. Rowan raised his gnarled hand, and the air around them seemed to thicken with magic. "This test, dear Serena, will challenge not just your magical abilities, but your heart, mind, and spirit. Are you prepared to face your deepest fears?" Before Serena could respond, Thorn slinked out from behind a nearby bush, his black fur gleaming in the morning light. "Fear is merely wisdom in disguise," the shape-shifting cat purred cryptically. "Though I wonder if our young witch understands the difference." Fern, who had been quietly tending to her herbs nearby, looked up with concern. "Rowan, perhaps we should wait. The garden's energy feels unsettled today." But Willow's branches swayed gently, her leaves rustling with ancient wisdom. "Some lessons cannot wait for perfect moments, dear Fern. The darkness approaching our garden won't wait either." Serena's throat tightened at the mention of the impending threat. How had she gone from discovering her magical abilities to becoming the garden's potential savior? The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Your test begins now," Rowan announced, tapping his staff against the ground 3 times. The garden around them began to shift and change, reality bending like a reflection in rippling water. You must navigate through 3 challenges, each designed to test different aspects of your readiness. Jasper's usual mischievous smile faded slightly. "Remember, Serena, not everything you see will be what appears to be." For once, the sprite's voice carried no hint of playfulness. The first challenge materialized before them. A maze of thorny vines that seemed to pulse with dark energy. But something about it felt wrong to Serena. Hadn't Luna taught her about the importance of trusting her intuition? "Should I enter the maze?" Serena asked, looking to Rowan for guidance. But the gnome's face remained impassive, offering no hints. Thorn circled her feet, his yellow eyes gleaming. Sometimes the most obvious path is the greatest deception. What did Luna teach you about seeing beyond the visible? Serena closed her eyes, remembering Luna's lessons about moonlight magic. The fairy had taught her that true sight comes not from the eyes, but from the heart. When she opened them again, she gasped. The maze wasn't real at all, but an illusion designed to trick her into choosing the wrong path. "The first test isn't about finding your way through the maze, is it?" Serena asked, turning to Rowan. "It's about seeing through deception." A small smile cracked through Rowan's serious demeanor. "Very good. But that was merely the beginning. Are you ready for what comes next?" The air shimmered again, and Serena found herself facing a mirrored image of herself. But this version's eyes held darkness and power that seemed tempting yet dangerous. Would she be strong enough to resist the allure of dark magic? And what other challenges awaited her in this test that would determine not just her fate, but the fate of the entire Enchanted Garden? As the second challenge began to unfold, Willow's leaves whispered an ancient prophecy. In the heart of the Chosen, where light and shadow meet, lies the power to either save or destroy all we hold dear. The weight of those words hung in the air as Serena prepared to face whatever came next, knowing that each decision she made would bring her closer to either victory or defeat. What would you do if you faced your own darkness? Would you recognize the difference between power that corrupts and power that protects? These were the questions Serena had to answer, not just with words, but with actions that would echo through the garden's history forever. The test had only begun, and already Serena could feel it changing her. But would these changes prepare her for the battle to come? Or would they reveal weaknesses she didn't know she had? As the garden held its breath, waiting to see how their young witch would fare, one thing became crystal clear. This was more than just a test of magic. It was a test of character, courage, and conviction. The air in the Enchanted Garden grew thick with an unnatural stillness. Serena stood beside Rowan, a heart pounding against her chest as she watched the sky above them darken with swirling, ominous clouds. Having just completed Rowan's test, she could feel her magical powers humming beneath her skin. But would it be enough for what was coming? "They're here," whispered Thorn, his black fur bristling as he transformed from his cat form into a more imposing shadowy figure. The darkness we've been preparing for has finally arrived. Luna descended from her usual perch among the stars as silvery wings dimmed by the encroaching shadows. "The moonlight grows weak," she said, her voice carrying a tremor that Serena had never heard before. "The shadows seek to devour all that is light and pure in our garden." Willow's leaves rustled anxiously despite the absence of wind. "In all my centuries, I have never felt such malevolence." The ancient tree groaned. "Serena, child, remember what you learned during your test. The garden's magic flows through you now." Jasper materialized beside them, his usually playful demeanor replaced by an unusual seriousness. "They're coming from all directions," he reported, his voice tight with concern. "The barrier spells are holding, but barely." Fern hurried over, her arms full of glowing herbs. "I've prepared what I can," she said, distributing the magical plants among them. "These will help strengthen our natural defenses, but..." She trailed off, looking uncertainly at the darkening sky. "But what?" Serena asked, feeling the weight of everyone's worried glances. Rowan stepped forward, his ancient eyes fixed on the horizon. "The shadows are stronger than we anticipated, young one. They've been feeding off fear and doubt throughout the realm, growing more powerful with each passing day." A cold wind swept through the garden, causing the magical flowers to close their petals and the enchanted lights to flicker. Serena could feel the darkness pressing against the garden's magical barriers, searching for weak points, testing their defenses. "What do they want?" Serena asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Luna's voice was soft but clear. "They seek what they have always sought, to extinguish the light of magic, to turn this sacred space into a realm of shadows. And now they seek you, Serena. Your power represents everything they wish to destroy." Thorn moved closer to Serena, his form shifting between cat and shadow. "The question isn't what they want, but what we're willing to do to stop them. Are you ready to face what comes next, young witch?" The garden's magical barriers shimmered and crackled as the shadow forces pressed harder against them. Serena could see dark tendrils seeping through small cracks, like ink spreading through water. The sight made her stomach clench with fear, but she remembered Rowan's teachings about courage in the face of darkness. "We need to work together," Serena declared, raising her voice above the growing wind. "Each of us has a different kind of magic, a different strength. That's what makes this garden special, isn't it? The way all our magic works together." Willow's branches swayed in agreement. "Wisdom beyond your years, child. Unity has always been the garden's greatest defense." As if in response to Serena's words, the shadows launched their first real assault. A massive wave of darkness crashed against the magical barriers, causing them to crack and splinter like glass. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 mirrors shattering at once. Form a circle, Rowan commanded, his voice carrying the authority of centuries. Join hands or paws or branches or wings, whatever you have. We must channel our magic together. They moved quickly, forming a circle in the heart of the garden. Serena stood between Rowan and Luna, feeling the powerful magic coursing through their joined hands. Willow extended her branches to complete the circle, while Thorn's shadowy form connected them all like a living thread. But how do we fight them? Serena asked, watching as more shadows seeped through the weakening barriers. How do we stop something that seems to be made of darkness itself? Jasper, for once completely serious, spoke up. Sometimes the best trick isn't about fighting at all. Sometimes it's about transforming what's dark into light. Luna's wings shimmered as she added, "Remember, young one, shadows cannot exist without light. They are not separate things, but two parts of the same whole." As the barriers continued to crack and the shadows pressed closer, Serena felt the weight of everything she had learned since discovering her magical abilities. The garden had become more than just a magical place to her. It was home. And these beings were more than just magical creatures. They were family. The question now wasn't whether they could win, but how they would face this darkness together. As the shadows prepared for their final assault, Serena realized that this was what all of Rowan's tests had been preparing her for. Not just to fight, but to lead, to unite, and to transform. The darkness loomed before them, a writhing mass of shadows that threatened to engulf everything they held dear. But in that moment, standing united in their circle of magic, Serena felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Because sometimes the darkest moments are when light shines the brightest, and sometimes the greatest magic comes not from fighting against the darkness, but from understanding how to transform it. What would happen next? Would their united magic be enough to face this ancient darkness? And what did Jasper mean about transforming darkness into light? The answers would come, but first, they had to face the shadows' arrival together, as one. The air in the enchanted garden grew thick with tension as shadows crept between the ancient trees, their darkness seeming to consume the usual magical shimmer that made the garden so special. Serena stood with her hands trembling, her newly discovered magical abilities flickering like a candle in the wind as she faced the encroaching darkness. Why are they here? What do they want? Serena whispered, her voice quavering as she looked to Rowan for answers. The wise old gnome's usually cheerful face was etched with concern. "They seek what all dark forces desire, my dear, power. The garden's magic has always been a beacon for those who wish to corrupt its pure energy." Luna, hovering nearby with her wings casting a soft silver glow, spoke in her melodious voice. "Remember, young witch, sometimes the darkest shadows are cast by the brightest lights." But what will you do when the shadows try to snuff out that light? Before Serena could respond, Jasper materialized beside her, his usual mischievous grin replaced by an uncharacteristically serious expression. "They're getting closer," he said, his eyes darting between the advancing shadows. "I can feel them trying to corrupt the garden's magic." Willow's leaves rustled anxiously as she spoke. "In all my centuries, I have never felt such malevolent energy. It reminds me of the great darkness that once threatened us long ago." Thorn slumped between them, his black fur almost invisible in the growing darkness. "The shadows are not just seeking to corrupt the garden," he said, his yellow eyes gleaming. "They're after something more specific, or shall I say someone?" All eyes turned to Serena, and the realization hit her like a physical blow. The darkness was after her, drawn to her developing magical powers. But why? Fern, who had been quietly tending to her herbs nearby, suddenly gasped. "The protective barriers are failing. The shadows are breaking through." The attack came swiftly and without warning. Dark tendrils shot through the garden's defenses, reaching for Serena with hungry determination. She raised her hands, attempting to conjure a protective spell as Rowan had taught her, but her magic was still too new, too unstable. "Focus, Serena," Rowan shouted, raising his own magical barriers. "Remember what we practiced." But the shadows were too strong, too numerous. They seemed to feed off her fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. Luna's silver light began to dim as the darkness pressed in, and even Willow's ancient magic seemed to falter. That's when Jasper made his decision. "Head you shadowy nuisances," he called out, his voice carrying its usual playful tone despite the dire circumstances. "Want to see a real trick?" Before anyone could stop him, Jasper began to glow with an intense inner light, drawing the shadow's attention away from Serena. "You want magic?" he taunted. "Come and get it." "Jasper, no," Serena cried, understanding his intention. "You can't handle them alone." But the forest sprite had already sprung into action, dancing between the shadow tendrils with his characteristic agility. Each time the darkness reached for him, he led it further away from Serena and the others, his own magical essence serving as bait. "Why is he doing this?" Serena asked, tears streaming down her face as she watched her friend risk everything to protect her. Thorn's voice was unusually gentle as he replied, "Sometimes, little witch, the greatest magic lies not in spells or powers, but in the sacrifice we make for those we care about." The shadows, now fully focused on Jasper, began to surround him. His light, usually so bright and playful, started to flicker. Yet he continued to dance and weave, keeping the darkness occupied while Rowan worked frantically to reinforce the garden's magical barriers. "We have to help him," Serena insisted, starting forward, but Luma held her back. "Wait," the fairy whispered. "Watch closely. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage reveal unexpected truths." As Jasper's light dimmed further, something remarkable began to happen. The shadows, drawn to his sacrificial act, started to change. Where they touched his fading light, they began to transform, taking on colors and shapes that seemed almost beautiful. But what would this transformation cost Jasper? And could Serena find the strength within herself to save both her friend and the garden before it was too late? The answer lay in the next crucial moments, as the fate of the enchanted garden hung in the balance, and the true nature of sacrifice and friendship was about to be tested in ways none of them could have imagined. What power could be greater than the darkness that threatened them? And what role would Jasper's sacrifice play in unlocking Serena's true potential? The answers would soon reveal themselves, but at what cost to their beloved forest sprite? The aftermath of Jasper's sacrifice hung heavy in the enchanted garden's air. Serena's heart pounded against her chest as she watched her friend's ethereal form flicker like a candle in the wind. The darkness that had threatened to consume them all still loomed at the edges of their sanctuary, held at bay only by Jasper's desperate act. "We can't lose him," Serena whispered, her voice trembling as she turned to Rowan. The wise old gnome's usually cheerful face was etched with concern as he studied the weakening barrier created by Jasper's magic. Luna descended from above, her silvery wings casting dancing shadows on the ground. "The darkness grows stronger," she warned, her usual riddles replaced by urgent clarity. "Jasper's energy wanes with each passing moment." Thorn, who had been observing from the shadows, stepped forward, his black fur seeming to absorb what little light remained. "There might be a way," he said, his yellow eyes fixed on the ancient willow tree that stood at the heart of the garden. "But it requires power far beyond what any of us individually possess." Fern, who had been quietly gathering healing herbs, spoke up. "Willow has stood here longer than any of us. If anyone knows how to protect the garden, it would be her." The gentle elf's hands trembled as she clutched her basket of herbs closer. As if responding to their conversation, Willow's leaves rustled despite the still air. Her ancient voice, deep and resonant, filled their minds. "Young ones, gather close," she commanded. "What Jasper has done is brave but unsustainable. We must act quickly if we are to save both him and the garden." Serena stepped forward, her newly discovered magical abilities tingling beneath her skin. "What can we do, Willow? Please, tell us how to help." The ancient tree's voice grew stronger. "In all my centuries, I have absorbed the magic of this garden, storing it within my rings. Each year of growth has been a year of gathering power. But to release it, to create a shield strong enough to protect us all, I need your help." "How?" Rowan asked, leaning forward on his gnarled staff. "What must we do?" "Form a circle," Willow instructed. "Each of you represents a different aspect of the garden's magic. Together, we can create something powerful enough to hold back the darkness and save Jasper. They quickly arranged themselves around Willow's massive trunk. Serena, with her raw magical potential, Rowan, with his ancient wisdom, Luna, carrying the moon's blessing, Thorn, master of shadows, and Fern, connected to the garden's living essence. But what about Jasper? Serena asked, her eyes darting to where her friend's form continued to fade. Will this help him? Willow's voice softened. Child, everything in this garden is connected. By protecting one, we protect all. Now join hands and focus your energy upward into my branches. As they linked hands, Serena felt a surge of power unlike anything she'd experienced before. It was as if every magical lesson she'd learned since discovering her abilities had been leading to this moment. Would it be enough? The darkness pressed closer, testing Jasper's weakening barrier. Serena could feel his struggle, his essence fighting to maintain the protection he created at such great cost. What would happen if it failed? Would the darkness consume everything they'd fought to protect? Willow's branches began to glow with an inner light, starting from the lowest limbs and climbing higher. Each leaf seemed to capture and amplify the combined energy of those gathered below. The light grew stronger, spreading outward like a dome of pure magic. Keep focusing, Willow encouraged as the shield took shape. Let your thoughts dwell on what you wish to protect, what makes this garden worth saving. Serena thought of her first day discovering the garden, of Jasper's playful tricks that had led her to uncover her own magical abilities. She thought of Luna's mysterious teachings, Rowan's patient guidance, Thorn's clever insights, and Fern's gentle care of every living thing. The shield continued to expand, its light taking on the colors of their combined magic: Serena's purple, Luna's silver, Rowan's earth brown, Thorn's midnight blue, and Fern's emerald green, all woven together by Willow's golden glow. But would this ancient magic be enough to save them all? As the shield reached its full size, encompassing the entire garden, they could only wait and hope that Willow's centuries of gathered power would prove strong enough to hold back the encroaching darkness and bring their friend back from the brink of sacrifice. The story continues to unfold as the garden's protectors maintain their circle, their combined magic flowing through Willow's ancient form. What secrets will this unified defense reveal? Can they maintain the shield long enough to save both Jasper and the garden? And what price might they all pay for wielding such powerful ancient magic? The aftermath of Willow's protective shield left an eerie silence hanging over the enchanted garden. Though the ancient tree's barrier had temporarily held back the encroaching darkness, it had taken its toll on many of the garden's inhabitants. As dawn broke, casting soft golden rays through Willow's weary branches, Fern emerged from her modest terrace cottage, her gentle eyes filled with determination. "The time has come," she whispered, her usually timid voice carrying an unusual strength. "My herbs have never been more needed than now." Serena watched as the herbalist elf moved swiftly between her carefully tended beds of medicinal plants, her small hands expertly selecting leaves, flowers, and roots. "Can I help, Fern?" she called out, eager to learn and assist. Fern looked up, a grateful smile crossing her face. "Indeed, young witch. There's much to do and many to heal. Would you like to learn the ways of natural magic?" As they worked together, Fern shared her knowledge with Serena, explaining how each plant held its own unique healing properties. "You see this silvery leaf?" she asked, holding up a delicate, shimmering plant. "This is moo mist sage. It helps restore magical energy when brewed into a tea. Willow will need this after extending so much power to create the shield." Rowan appeared, looking more worn than usual, his normally bright eyes dulled with exhaustion. "The barrier took more from us than we expected," he said, leaning heavily on his walking stick. "Fern, your skills are needed now more than ever." Luna fluttered down nearby, her wings lacking their usual sparkle. "The darkness left its mark on all of us," she said, her voice carrying a hint of pain. "Even the night creatures feel its weight." Jasper, usually bouncing with endless energy, sat quietly in a corner of the garden, nursing a shadowy mark on his arm where the darkness had touched him. Thorn prowled nearby, his yellow eyes fixed on the sprite with unusual concern. "What happens if we can't heal everyone in time?" Serena asked, her voice trembling slightly as she helped Fern crush herbs in a mortar. Fern's hands stilled for a moment. "We must not think that way," she said firmly. "Every garden has its seasons of struggle, but with proper care and attention, healing always follows. Watch closely now." The herbalist elf began mixing various ingredients in her wooden bowls, creating different remedies for different ailments. She taught Serena how to identify the specific needs of each garden inhabitant and prepare the appropriate treatment. "For Willow, we need strength and restoration," Fern explained, creating a paste from moo sage and other powerful herbs. "For Luna, we need something to restore her sparkle. Crystal bloom powder mixed with morning dew works best. And for Jasper's shadow mark, we'll need something special indeed." As they worked, Thorn approached them, his black fur gleaming in the morning light. "The darkness leaves marks that go deeper than the surface," he said mysteriously. "Some wounds require more than just physical healing." Fern nodded sagely. "That's why we combine the physical properties of the herbs with the intention of healing. Serena, as a witch, you can help amplify the healing properties with your magic." Together, they moved through the garden, treating each inhabitant with carefully prepared remedies. Serena watched in amazement as color returned to faces, sparkle to wings, and strength to limbs. Even Willow's leaves seemed to perk up after receiving Fern's special treatment. But as they worked, a question nagged at Serena's mind. "Fern," she asked, "why didn't you use these healing powers during previous challenges in the garden?" The herbalist elf's expression grew thoughtful. Healing magic, like all magic, has its proper time and place. Sometimes, wounds must be earned and learned from before they can be healed. The garden teaches us this wisdom. As the day progressed, the garden began to show signs of recovery. Luna's wings regained their shimmer, Jasper's shadow mark began to fade, and Rowan stood straighter, but something still felt unfinished, incomplete. "There's more to healing than just mending physical wounds, isn't there?" Serena asked, watching as Thorn observed their work with knowing eyes. Fern nodded, her expression serious. "The greatest healing often happens in the heart and spirit. The herbs can help, but the real healing comes from within. That's why the garden brought us all together. Each of us has a part to play in the healing process." As night approached, the garden hummed with renewed energy, but questions still lingered in the air. What other challenges would they face? Would Fern's healing knowledge be enough for what was to come? And most importantly, what deeper healing did the garden itself need? The answers remained elusive, but one thing was certain: they were stronger together. And with Fern's healing wisdom combined with their various abilities, they stood a better chance against whatever darkness might return. As Serena helped Fern store the remaining herbs, she couldn't help but wonder what new lessons the garden would reveal in the days to come. The moonlight cast long shadows across the enchanted garden as Thorn, the mysterious black cat, stood atop Willow's highest branch. His emerald eyes gleamed with an intensity never before seen by his companions. The time had finally come for him to reveal his true nature, something he had kept hidden for centuries. Have you ever wondered why some secrets remain buried in darkness? Thorn's voice echoed through the garden, addressing Serena, who stood below with Luna and Jasper at her side. Sometimes, young witch, the most powerful magic lies in knowing when to reveal one's true self. Serena watched in amazement as Thorn's form began to shift and ripple like water under moonlight. The small black cat grew larger, his fur shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. "Thorn, what's happening to you?" she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. The shapeshifter's transformation was spectacular yet terrifying. Where once sat a simple black cat, now stood a magnificent creature with the body of a panther, wings of a raven, and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. Ancient runes glowed beneath his fur, pulsing with magical energy. "I am what the ancient ones called a shadowmancer," Thorn explained, his voice deeper and more resonant than before. "For centuries, I have guarded this garden alongside Rowan, though few knew my true purpose." Rowan the gnome stepped forward, his usually jolly face serious. The dark forces approaching our garden are no ordinary threat to your friends. They seek to corrupt the very essence of our magical sanctuary. That's why Thorn can no longer hide in the shadows. The air grew thick with tension as dark clouds began to gather above the garden. Luna's wings dimmed slightly as she sensed the approaching danger. "They're coming?" she whispered, her usual riddles replaced by stark fear. Fern hurried to gather her most powerful healing herbs, her hands trembling. "Will we be able to protect the garden?" she asked, looking to Thorn for reassurance. The Shadowmancer's eyes narrowed as he scanned the horizon. "The question isn't whether we can protect it, but whether we're willing to sacrifice everything to do so. Are you ready to face what comes, young Serena?" Serena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Her recently discovered magical abilities seemed insignificant compared to Thorn's impressive powers, but something told her she had an important role to play. The dark forces materialized at the garden's edge, shadowy figures that seemed to drain the life from everything they touched. Plants withered in their wake, and the very air grew cold and stale. Thorn launched himself into battle, his form shifting and changing as he fought. One moment, he was a massive eagle, clawing at the shadows with talons of light. The next, he was a wolf of pure energy, tearing through the darkness with teeth made of starfire. "Watch closely," Serena called out Luna, her wings now glowing brighter in defiance of the darkness. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't won through power alone, but through understanding the nature of your enemy. Jasper, usually playful and mischievous, revealed his own surprising strength as he used his sprite magic to create dazzling illusions that confused and scattered the shadow creatures. Even tricks have their place in a serious fight, he called out with a wink. Willow's branches swayed protectively over them all, her ancient voice carrying wisdom. "Remember, dear ones, darkness cannot exist where light chooses to shine brightest." As the battle raged on, Thorn's true power became evident. He wasn't just fighting the shadows. He was absorbing them, transforming their darkness into pure magical energy. Each transformation seemed more spectacular than the last, yet each also seemed to drain him further. The price of power, he growled between shifts, is knowing when and how to use it. "Remember this, Serena. Your magic isn't about how much power you possess, but how wisely you choose to wield it." The garden itself seemed to respond to Thorn's battle, with flowers blooming in the wake of his victory over each shadow creature. Fern worked tirelessly to heal any damage done to the plants, while Rowan used his ancient knowledge to strengthen the garden's magical barriers. But as the battle reached its peak, a question hung in the air. Would Thorn's revealed powers be enough to save their beloved garden? And what would be the cost of such powerful magic? Serena watched in awe as her feline friend continued to fight, realizing that sometimes the quietest and most mysterious among us carry the greatest strength. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: Enchanted Garden's protectors would not surrender without a fight. As darkness and light clashed in a spectacular display of magical prowess, the true test of their strength and unity was just beginning. What other secrets did the garden and its inhabitants hold? And how would this battle change their magical sanctuary forever? The answers to these questions would soon unfold, but for now, all eyes were on Thorn as he danced through the shadows, a living embodiment of the garden's mysterious and powerful magic. The garden lay shrouded in an unusual darkness, the familiar silver glow that typically bathed the enchanted grounds conspicuously absent. Serena stood at the center of the herb maze, her heart beating rapidly as she watched Luna's typically brilliant wings dim to a faint flicker. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "The moon," Luna whispered, her voice uncharacteristically fragile. They veiled it somehow. The ancient darkness, it's consuming the night sky. The fairy's usually playful demeanor had vanished, replaced by an expression of genuine concern that made Serena's stomach twist with anxiety. Rowan hobbled forward, his known features creased with worry. "I've seen this only once before, young Serena. The dark forces have created a shadow veil, a magical barrier that blocks the moon's light. Without it, Luna's powers will fade," Luna finished, her wings drooping slightly. "And with them, much of the garden's nighttime protection." Serena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. After witnessing Thorn's incredible display of power in the previous battle, she had grown somewhat dependent on her magical allies. But now, with Luna weakened and the darkness growing stronger, she would need to step up. But why now? Serena asked, her voice echoing in the unusually still night air. Why target the moon's light? Jasper materialized beside them, his usually mischievous grin replaced by a serious expression. Think about it, Serena. What happened in the last battle? Thorn showed his true strength, and they're afraid. They're trying to weaken us one by one. From nearby, Willow's leaves rustle despite the absence of wind. The sprite speaks truth, the ancient tree intoned. In all my years, I've observed that darkness often strikes when light shows its greatest potential. They fear what we might become together. Fern emerged from behind Willow's trunk, her arms full of glowing herbs. These might help, she offered timidly. They're moonflowers that store lunar energy. They won't restore Luna's full power, but they might give us a fighting chance. As if in response to Fern's words, the cold wind swept through the garden, carrying with it whispers of malice. Serena shivered, but not from the cold. She could feel the dark forces gathering, testing their defenses, searching for weaknesses. What do we do? Serena asked, looking around at her weakened allies. How can we fight without Luna's light? Thorn, who had been silently observing from the shadows, stepped forward. Perhaps, he purred, his yellow eyes gleaming. It's time for you to discover what lies within yourself, young witch. You've been relying on our powers, but have you truly explored your own? The question hung in the air, making Serena reflect on her journey so far. Had she been too dependent on her magical friends? Was this darkness actually an opportunity in disguise? Rowan placed his gnarled hand on Serena's arm. Remember what I told you when you first arrived in this garden. Magic isn't just about power, it's about understanding. Understanding yourself, understanding the balance of nature, understanding the connection between all things. Luna, though weakened, managed a small smile. Even in darkness, stars can shine. Perhaps it's time for you to be our star, Serena. As if in response to Luna's words, the darkness seemed to press closer, making the shadows between the trees deeper and more menacing. Serena could feel the magic within her stirring, responding to the threat. But could she harness it without the guidance she'd grown accustomed to? Jasper bounced nervously from foot to foot. Not to rush anyone, but those shadows are looking pretty hungry, and I'm not particularly interested in becoming their midnight snack. Serena closed her eyes, feeling the garden's energy flowing around her. Even without the moon's light, there was magic here, in Willow's ancient roots, in Fern's carefully tended herbs, in the very soil beneath her feet. She just needed to learn how to tap into it on her own. What if this isn't about fighting the darkness? She wondered aloud. What if it's about finding our own light? Thorn's tail twitched approvingly. Now you're asking the right questions, young witch. But can you find the answers before the darkness finds us? As the shadows continued to creep closer, Serena faced her greatest challenge yet. Without Luna's guiding light, she would need to discover her own inner strength. But with the dark forces gathering and her allies weakened, would her awakening come too late? The garden held its breath, waiting to see if its young protector could rise to the occasion. The moonless night had only just begun, and somewhere in the darkness, ancient forces watched and waited, testing not just Serena's power, but her ability to believe in herself when all other lights had failed. The garden lay silent under a starlit sky, the absence of moonlight casting long shadows across the ancient paths. Serena sat cross-legged on a moss-covered stone, her face etched with worry as she watched Luna's usually brilliant glow flicker like a dying candle. The events of the moonless night had shaken her confidence, and questions swirled in her mind like autumn leaves in a whirlwind. Why do you look so troubled, young witch? Rowan's gravelly voice broke through her thoughts. The old gnome emerged from behind a cluster of mushrooms, his white beard gleaming even in the dim light. Your magic didn't fail you tonight. It revealed itself in ways you hadn't expected. Serena sighed, twirling a strand of her hair nervously. But Rowan, without Luna's light, I felt so lost. How can I be sure of my abilities when I rely so much on others' power? Jasper, who had been eavesdropping from a nearby branch, somersaulted down to join them. Oh, come on. Did you forget how you made those shadow puppets dance without any moonlight? That was brilliant. His enthusiasm brought a slight smile to Serena's face. Rowan settled himself on a toadstool, his wise eyes twinkling. Tell me, dear one, did you know why the Enchanted Garden chose you? He posed the question carefully, knowing its importance. Before Serena could answer, Willow's branches rustled softly above them. I remember the day you first stepped into this garden, the ancient tree's voice whispered. Your heart sang with possibility, even before you knew of your powers. Thorn materialized from the shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming. The garden doesn't choose the weak-willed or the dependent, he purred, circling around them. It chooses those who have the potential to grow, to transform, just as I do. Fern, who had been quietly tending to her herbs nearby, approached with a handful of glowing moss. Sometimes the strongest magic comes from the gentlest sources, she offered softly, placing the moss in Serena's palm, like these tiny plants that create their own light. But how can I be sure? Serena asked, watching the moss's soft illumination. How do I know my power isn't just borrowed from the garden, from Luna, from all of you? Rowan leaned forward, his expression serious. Let me tell you a secret about magic, one that took me centuries to understand. Magic isn't something we borrow or steal, it's something we awaken within ourselves. The garden, Luna's light, even my own knowledge. These are not sources of power, but mirrors that reflect what already exists inside you. Think about it, he continued, gesturing to the darkness around them. When Luna's light faded, did your magic truly weaken? Or did you simply believe it would? Serena reflected on the night's events, remembering how she had instinctively created light from shadows, how she had found new ways to use her magic, where the familiar patterns were disrupted. I did things I didn't know I could do, she admitted. Exactly, Jasper exclaimed, performing an excited backflip. You're like a seedling that's finally breaking through the soil. You just needed a little darkness to grow toward the light. Willow's leaves danced in agreement. Every great witch in my memory began just as you did. Uncertain, questioning, seeking validation from external sources. But true power bloomed when they looked within. But why test me this way? Serena asked, looking at her mentors. Why not just tell me? Thorn stretched lazily, his tail swishing. Would you have believed us if we had? Some lessons must be lived to be learned. Rowan nodded sagely. Magic is not about knowing, it's about believing. When you truly believe in your own power, the garden's magic, Luna's light, all of our abilities become tools rather than crutches. They enhance what's already there, like rain nourishing a flourishing garden. As if in response to his words, the moss in Serena's hand began to glow brighter, its light spreading to create patterns in the air. She hadn't cast any spell, hadn't whispered any incantation. The magic had responded to her growing understanding. You see, Fern smiled, her eyes reflecting the magical light. The power was always yours. We're just here to help you remember how to use it. But remember, Rowan cautioned, with this understanding comes responsibility. Your power is like the garden itself. It must be tended, respected, and used with wisdom. Are you ready for that? Serena stood, the glowing moss floating around her like tiny stars. I think I'm beginning to understand. The moonless night wasn't a test of my magic. It was a test of my faith in myself. And what did you learn? Luna's voice drifted down from above, where she hovered with diminished but steady light. That true magic doesn't come from outside sources, Serena replied, her voice growing stronger. It comes from within, from believing in ourselves and understanding our own potential. The garden, the moon, all of you, you're not my source of power, you're my teachers, my guides, my friends. Rowan beamed with pride. Now that's wisdom worthy of a true witch. But tell me, what will you do with this knowledge? The question hung in the air like morning mist, inviting Serena to contemplate her next steps on this magical journey. How will this new understanding shape her path forward? What challenges awaited her now that she recognized her own strength? And most importantly, how would she use this wisdom to protect and nurture the enchanted garden that had taught her so much? The morning dew sparkled like tiny diamonds across the enchanted garden as Serena walked alongside Rowan, their conversation from the previous day still echoing in her mind. If my power truly comes from within, she wondered aloud, then why does the garden feel so alive with magic? Rowan's eyes twinkled with that familiar knowing look. An excellent question, young witch. Perhaps it's time you learned about the garden's greatest secret. He gestured toward a path that Serena had never noticed before, lined with luminescent flowers that seemed to pulse with an inner light. As they walked, Luna materialized beside them, her wings casting moonlight-like shadows even in the daylight. The heart calls to you, dear Serena. Can you feel its rhythm? She asked in her melodious voice. Serena closed her eyes and realized she could indeed feel something. A gentle pulsing that seemed to match her own heartbeat. What is that? She whispered, both excited and slightly nervous. Jasper suddenly popped out from behind a mushroom, startling them all. Oh, are we finally showing her the heart? Can I come? I promise not to play any tricks. His eyes were wide with genuine enthusiasm, lacking their usual mischievous glint. You may join us, Rowan nodded, as long as you remember the significance of what we're about to show Serena. As they ventured deeper into the garden, Willow's branches swayed despite the still air. The heart has been waiting for you, child. The ancient tree's voice rustled through its leaves. Few have been deemed worthy to witness its power. Fern emerged from her herb patch, carrying a basket of glowing plants. These will help light our way, she said softly, distributing the luminous flora among the group. The heart's chamber can be quite dark. Dark, yet illuminating, came Thorn's smooth voice as he padded alongside them, his black fur seeming to absorb the light from Fern's plants. Are you prepared for what you might learn, little witch? Serena's heart raced with anticipation. What exactly is the garden's heart? She asked, looking around at her gathered friends. Luna smiled mysteriously. It is the beginning and the end, the source and the destination. It is where all magic flows and returns. But how can that be? Serena pressed. Rowan just taught me that magic comes from within us. Both truths can coexist, Rowan explained as they approached an ancient stone archway covered in phosphorescent moss. The heart of the garden is not just a source of power, it's a nexus, a meeting point where all magical energies converge and dance together. As they passed through the archway, Serena gasped. They had entered a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with crystals that seemed to capture and reflect every color imaginable. In the center, suspended in mid-air, was a pulsing orb of pure light that changed colors like an aurora. The heart, Jasper whispered, unusually reverent. Pretty amazing, right? Fern stepped forward, placing her glowing plants in holders around the chamber. The heart connects all living things in the garden. It's why my herbs grow with such potency, why Willow remembers so much, why Luna can dance with moonbeams even during the day. Thorn sat elegantly, his tail wrapping around his paws. It's also why I can shift forms, and why Jasper's tricks always seem to work out for the best, even when they shouldn't. But remember what I taught you yesterday, Rowan said gently to Serena. The heart doesn't create our magic. It amplifies what's already within us. It's like a mirror, reflecting and magnifying our own inner light. Serena approached the floating orb, feeling its warm pulse synchronize with her own heartbeat. It's beautiful, she breathed, but why show me now? Luna floated closer, her wings catching the rainbow light. Because you're ready to understand that magic isn't just about power, it's about connection. The heart shows us that we're all part of something greater than ourselves. Watch closely. Willow's voice echoed through the chamber. As Serena observed, she could see tiny threads of light extending from the heart, connecting to each of her friends. A golden strand to Rowan, a silver one to Luna, a playful green one to Jasper, a nurturing pink one to Fern, a deep purple one to Thorn, and a rich brown one to Willow's roots that extended into the chamber. And look, Jasper pointed excitedly. You have one too. Sure enough, a brilliant white thread of light extended from the heart to Serena's own chest. As she watched, it began to pulse with all the colors she could see in her friend's threads. What does it mean? She asked, touching the thread gently. Rowan smiled warmly. It means you're not just learning magic, Serena. You're learning to be a bridge between all types of magic. Your curiosity and compassion allow you to understand and connect with all of us, just as the heart does. But with great connection comes great responsibility, Thorn added, his green eyes gleaming. The heart must be protected, for it maintains the balance of all magic in the garden. As Serena stood there, surrounded by her friends and bathed in the heart's rainbow light, she felt a deep sense of purpose settling over her. She wasn't just a witch learning magic anymore. She was part of something much bigger, much more important. So what happens now? She asked, looking around at her companions. Luna's wings shimmered as she smiled. Now, dear Serena, your real training begins. Are you ready to learn how to help maintain the balance of the garden's heart? The question hung in the air like magic itself, promising new adventures and challenges ahead. What secrets would the heart reveal? What responsibilities would come with this new knowledge? And how would this change Serena's role in the Enchanted Garden? The answers would come in time, but for now, Serena stood in the heart's chamber, feeling more connected to her magical home and friends than ever before, ready to embrace whatever came next in her magical journey. The silver moonlight cascaded through the ancient trees of the Enchanted Garden, casting ethereal shadows on the ground where Serena stood, her heart racing with anticipation. The discovery of the garden's magical core in the previous day had left her both exhilarated and overwhelmed. But now, as she faced her greatest challenge yet, she wasn't alone. Are you certain you're ready for this, dim one? Rowan's gravelly voice carried across the clearing, his ancient eyes twinkling with both concern and pride. The old gnome had watched Serena grow from a hesitant newcomer to a confident young witch, and this moment felt like the culmination of all their shared experiences. Serena took a deep breath, her hands slightly trembling. I have to be ready, Rowan. The garden's magic is fading faster than ever, and we need to act now. She looked around at her gathered friends, each one unique and special in their own way. Could they really combine their powers to save their beloved garden? Luna descended from her perch on a nearby branch, her wings casting sparkles of moonlight across the grass. Remember, dear Serena, magic isn't just about power, it's about harmony. What seems impossible alone becomes possible together. Her riddle-like wisdom, for once, seemed crystal clear to Serena. Jasper, who had been unusually still and serious, piped up. Well, if we're going to do this, let's make it spectacular. He bounced from foot to foot, his usual mischievous energy barely contained. I've never been part of a unity spell before. Do you think it will tickle? Willow's leaves rustled softly as she spoke, her voice carrying centuries of wisdom. In all my years, I've witnessed countless magical events, but never have I seen all the garden's guardians unite in such a way. The last time something similar was attempted was over 300 years ago, and even then... Yes, we know it's unprecedented, Thorn interrupted, his tail swishing impatiently as he sat in his feline form. But dwelling on the past won't help us now. Serena, what do you need from each of us? Fern, who had been quietly arranging out in a circle around them, looked up with gentle eyes. The plants are ready to lend their strength, Serena. I've selected the most powerful healing herbs we have. Serena closed her eyes for a moment, recalling everything she had learned about the garden's heart. The magical core she had discovered was like a beating pulse beneath their feet, but it was weakening. Without intervention, the Enchanted Garden would lose its magic entirely, and with it, the home and essence of all her friends. Everyone, please form a circle, Serena instructed, her voice growing stronger with each word. Rowan, I need your connection to the garden's history. Luna, your moonlight magic will amplify our power. Jasper, your ability to channel natural energy will help stabilize the spell. Willow, your deep roots will ground us all. Thorn, your transformation magic will help bind everything together. And Fern, your knowledge of the garden's flora will help direct the healing energy. As they moved into position, the air began to thicken with magical potential. But would it be enough? Could they really save their beloved garden? Join hands, or paws, or branches, Serena continued, trying to keep her voice steady. Focus on your unique connection to the garden. Think about what this place means to you, what makes it special. The circle began to glow as each member contributed their essence. Rowan's ancient magic swirled like golden dust, while Luna's moonlight created silver streams that danced through the air. Jasper's natural energy pulsed green and vibrant, while Willow's power rose from the earth like gentle waves. Thorn's transformation magic shimmered in deep purple hues, and Fern's healing energy bloomed in soft pink tendrils. Remember, Serena said, her voice barely above a whisper, we're not just casting a spell. We're sharing our love for this garden, our hope for its future, our belief in its magic. As their combined powers swirled and merged, questions raced through Serena's mind. Would their different types of magic work together harmoniously? Could they generate enough power to rejuvenate the garden's heart? What would happen if they failed? The air crackled with magical energy as Serena began to chant the Unity spell, her words echoing with the power of ancient magic. But this was just the beginning of their greatest challenge yet. Would their combined strength be enough to save their magical home? And what unexpected consequences might arise from such a powerful magical fusion? The story continues as the spell builds in intensity, each character contributing their unique essence to the magical working that could either save or forever change the Enchanted Garden. What secrets will be revealed in this moment of ultimate unity? What sacrifices might be required to succeed? And how will this extraordinary magical collaboration transform not just the garden, but each of its beloved guardians? The pre-dawn air hung heavy with anticipation as streaks of pale light began to pierce through the darkness. Serena stood at the center of the Enchanted Garden, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve unwavering. The combined energies of her friends still coursed through her, creating an ethereal glow that surrounded her like a protective cocoon. Can you feel it, young one? Rowan's voice carried across the garden, steady and encouraging. The dawn approaches, and with it, our greatest moment of power. The wise gnome stood firmly beside her, his ancient staff pulsing with an inner light that matched the growing brightness in the sky. Luna, her wings still shimmering with the last remnants of moonlight, hovered nearby. The balance of night and day, the perfect moment when both forces are equal, she whispered in her melodic voice. But remember, dear Serena, timing is everything. What happens when two opposite forces meet? What magic lies in that precious instant? Jasper, for once completely serious, darted between the shadows that were slowly retreating. The darkness is weakening, he called out, his usually playful demeanor replaced with determined focus. It's fighting back harder than ever. Can you feel it pushing against us? Indeed, Serena could feel the opposing force, a thick, oppressive energy that sought to smother the growing light. It pressed against their unified spell like a heavy blanket, searching for any weakness in their magical defense. Would their combined strength be enough to overcome it? Willow's leaves rustled with ancient knowledge, her voice carrying centuries of wisdom. In all my years, I have witnessed countless dawns, but none quite like this one. The garden remembers, child. It remembers every battle, every triumph, every moment of unity. Let its memory strengthen you. Thorn slumped between Willow's roots, his yellow eyes gleaming with mysterious knowledge. The veil between light and shadow is thinnest now, he purred, his form seeming to shift between solid and ethereal. But remember, young witch, sometimes the greatest power lies not in forcing one over the other, but in finding the balance between them. Fern, who had been quietly weaving protective charms with her herbs, spoke up. The garden's essence flows through all of us, she said softly, her gentle voice carrying unexpected strength. Every plant, every creature, every spirit, we're all connected in this moment. Can you feel how the earth itself rises to meet the coming dawn? As the first true rays of sunlight began to break over the horizon, Serena felt the culmination of everything she had learned in the garden building within her. The unity spell they had cast together pulsed with the combined strength of all their unique abilities. Rowan's ancient wisdom, Luna's moonlit magic, Jasper's clever adaptability, Willow's enduring memory, Thorn's understanding of shadows, and Fern's connection to nature's healing power. But would it be enough? The opposing darkness gathered itself for one final assault, pressing against their defenses with renewed vigor. Serena could feel the strain on their unified spell, like a rope pulled too tight. How long could they maintain this delicate balance? "Remember why we fight," Rowan called out, sensing her moment of doubt. "Remember what this garden means to all of us, what it represents for the balance of magic itself." Luna's voice joined in, a riddle's giving way to clear truth. "The dawn comes not just to the sky, but to your heart, Serena. Let it fill you, let it guide you." The darkness surged again, but this time something was different. As the sun's rays touched the high leaves of Willow's branches, Serena felt a new power awakening within her. It wasn't just the combined strength of her friends or the ancient magic of the garden. It was something more fundamental, more profound. "The light," Jasper exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's not just fighting the darkness, it's transforming it." Indeed, where the sun's rays met the opposing force, something extraordinary was happening. Instead of a violent clash, there was a beautiful metamorphosis. The darkness wasn't being destroyed. It was being changed, balanced, integrated into a new kind of magic that neither light nor shadow could create alone. Thorn's tail twitched with approval. "Now you understand," he said mysteriously. "The true power lies not in victory over darkness, but in the harmony between both forces." As this realization spread through their unified spell, Serena felt their combined magic shifting, adapting. Instead of pushing against the darkness, they began to work with it, guiding it, showing it a new way to exist in harmony with the light. Fern's voice rose in a soft chant, her herbs releasing healing essences that seemed to ease the transformation. "Every garden needs both sunshine and shadow to thrive," she reminded them, "just as every story needs both challenge and triumph to be complete." The sun continued to rise, painting the sky in brilliant colors that seemed to reflect the magical transformation taking place in the garden. But what would this new dawn bring? What changes would this harmony between light and shadow create in their beloved garden? And most importantly, how would this moment of perfect balance change them all? As the first rays of dawn pierced through the dissipating darkness, Serena stood in the center of the battle-worn Enchanted garden, her heart heavy with both exhaustion and hope. The aftermath of the night's intense magical conflict had left its mark on every corner of their beloved sanctuary. Wilted flowers drooped sadly, and patches of scorched earth marked where dark magic had struck. "The garden, it's so wounded," Serena whispered, her voice trembling as she reached out to touch a damaged rose bush. Rowan hobbled to her side, his usually neat beard slightly singed from the battle. "My dear," the wise gnome began, placing his weathered hand on her arm, "the garden has endured many trials throughout its existence, but never has it had someone like you to help heal it." Luna descended from above, her wings still glowing with residual moonlight even as the sun began to rise. "The garden's magic runs deep, young witch. Can you feel it calling to you?" she asked, her voice melodious yet tinged with concern. Serena closed her eyes, allowing herself to sense the subtle vibrations of magic that still pulsed beneath the soil. Yes, she could feel it, the garden's heartbeat, wounded but still strong. But how could she, a newly discovered witch, restore such ancient magic? Jasper materialized beside them, unusually serious for once. "Remember what we learned during the battle, Serena. Magic isn't just about power, it's about connection." He demonstrated by gently touching a withered flower, causing it to perk up slightly. Thorn, who had been observing from atop a broken fountain, stretched lazily before speaking. "The garden's magic is like a tapestry," he purred, his yellow eyes gleaming with ancient knowledge. "Each thread connects to another. Pull one strand, and you affect the whole pattern." Fern emerged from behind a cluster of damaged herbs, her gentle face showing determination. "Serena, let me show you something," she said, kneeling beside a patch of earth. "See how even in the most damaged areas, tiny seedlings are already pushing through. The garden wants to heal itself. It just needs our help to guide it." Willow's leaves rustled softly as she joined the conversation. In all my centuries, I've witnessed the garden's resilience countless times. But never have I seen such a perfect alignment of guardians ready to assist in its restoration. Serena, you are the catalyst we've been waiting for. Taking a deep breath, Serena began to understand what she needed to do. We'll need to work together, she said, looking at each of her friends. Each of you knows a different aspect of the garden's magic. Will you help me? What followed was a remarkable demonstration of unified magic. Serena stood at the center, channeling her power while her friends formed a circle around her. Luna provided the essence of moonlight magic, even as dawn approached. Jasper contributed his knowledge of nature's playful energy. Thorn added his mysterious transformative power, while Fern shared her deep understanding of plant life. Rowan began chanting ancient gnomish words of power, words that seemed to make the very air vibrate with potential. Willow's roots extended throughout the garden, creating a network through which healing energy could flow. As Serena's magic grew stronger, questions raced through her mind. Would their combined power be enough? Could she really channel all these different magical energies effectively? What if she made a mistake? But as her power flowed outward, something remarkable began to happen. The garden responded to their unified magic with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone. Flowers straightened and bloomed anew. Scorched earth became rich and fertile again. The fountain repaired itself, crystal clear water flowing once more. Yet the restoration wasn't just about returning things to their previous state. New elements emerged, flowers that had never been seen before, glowing with gentle magic. Pathways rearranged themselves into more harmonious patterns. The garden was not just healing, it was evolving. Look, Jasper exclaimed, pointing to a patch of flowers that seemed to dance with rainbow colors. The garden is creating new magic. As the restoration continued, Serena realized that this moment represented more than just healing physical damage. The garden was becoming something greater, a perfect blend of old and new magic, of traditional wisdom and fresh innovation. The process continued for hours, with each guardian contributing their unique magical signature to the restoration. When it was finally complete, the enchanted garden had transformed into something even more magnificent than before. But what new mysteries and adventures would this evolved garden hold? What undiscovered magic now lay waiting to be explored? As the sun fully rose over their renewed sanctuary, Serena looked at her friends with tears of joy in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "But I have a feeling this is just the beginning of something even more wonderful." Rowan nodded sagely, his eyes twinkling. "Indeed, my dear. For every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. And this garden still has many secrets to share with those who are willing to learn." The question hung in the air like morning mist. What new adventures awaited them in this restored and enhanced enchanted garden? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. They would face whatever came next together as guardians of this magical realm. The enchanted garden shimmered under the light of a full moon, its newly restored splendor even more magnificent in the silver glow. Serena stood in the center of the garden, her heart still racing from the events that had led to its restoration. The magical energy that flowed through her veins felt different now, somehow more complete, more purposeful. Have you ever wondered why some moments feel more magical than others? Luna's melodic voice drifted through the air as she materialized before Serena, her wings casting prismatic reflections across the dewy grass. It's because magic itself recognizes growth, dear one. Rowan, who had been tending to some newly sprouted moonflowers nearby, approached with a knowing smile. "Luna speaks truth, young witch. What you've accomplished here isn't just about restoring plants and paths. It's about understanding the very essence of what makes this garden special." Jasper, unable to contain his excitement, tumbled through the air and landed gracefully beside them. Oh, is this going to be one of those special magical moments? Should I prepare some celebratory mischief?" His eyes twinkled with both joy and potential pranks. "Patience, little sprite." Willow's branches swayed gently as she spoke. "Some moments deserve reverence." The ancient tree's words carried the weight of centuries of wisdom. Thorn slinked out of the shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming with interest. Indeed, he purred, settling himself on a nearby stone. Even I can sense something significant is about to occur. The shapeshifter's tail twitched with anticipation. Fern emerged from her herb garden, carrying a basket of freshly picked flowers. The plants themselves are singing tonight, she said softly, a gentle voice filled with wonder. They know something special is happening. Luna floated closer to Serena, her ethereal presence filling the air with starlight. You've shown wisdom beyond your years, dear Serena. When faced with challenges, you didn't simply rely on power, you sought understanding. Do you know why that matters so much? Serena pondered the question, thinking back to all she had learned since discovering her magical abilities. Is it because magic isn't just about having power, but about knowing how to use it responsibly? Precisely, Luna smiled, her glow intensifying. And that's why you're ready for what I'm about to give you. But first, tell me, what do you think is the greatest lesson this garden has taught you? The young witch looked around at her gathered friends, each one having played a crucial role in her journey. I've learned that magic isn't something that belongs to just one person or creature. It's about connection, between all living things, between the past and present, between wisdom and wonder. Luna's approval radiated like moonbeams. And that understanding is exactly why you're worthy of this blessing. She raised her hands, and the air around them began to shimmer with an otherworldly light. What's happening? Jasper whispered loudly, earning himself a stern look from Rowan. The moonlight seemed to gather and concentrate, forming a delicate silver pendant in Luna's hands. But this was no ordinary jewelry. Within it swirled what appeared to be living moonlight, dancing and shifting like liquid starlight. This is the Moonheart pendant, Luna explained, her voice carrying through the garden like a gentle breeze. It's been waiting for centuries for someone who truly understands the balance between power and wisdom. Would you like to know what makes it so special? The question hung in the air as everyone leaned in closer, eager to learn about this mysterious gift. Even Thorn, typically aloof, edged nearer with unconcealed curiosity. The pendant doesn't simply add to your power, Serena. Instead, it amplifies your connection to the garden and all its inhabitants. It will help you see the threads of magic that bind all things together. But more importantly, it will remind you of this moment, when you proved that the strongest magic comes from understanding and compassion. As Luna placed the pendant around Serena's neck, a warm, gentle light pulsed through the garden. Every plant seemed to glow slightly, and even the air itself felt more alive with magic. I feel different, Serena gasped, touching the pendant gently. It's like I can sense everything in the garden more clearly now. Willow's leaves rustled with approval. That's because you're now truly part of the garden's heart, child. But remember, with such a gift comes great responsibility. What will you do with this new connection? Serena looked at each of her friends in turn. Rowan's wise eyes, Jasper's playful grin, Fern's gentle smile, Thorn's knowing gaze, and Luna's radiant presence. I want to learn more, to understand more. There's still so much about this garden and its magic that I don't know. Will you all help me? That's precisely why this blessing was meant for you, Luna said softly. Because you know that true wisdom comes not from having all the answers, but from never stopping to ask questions. As the night deepened around them, the garden seemed to pulse with new possibilities. What other secrets would Serena discover with her enhanced connection to this magical place? What new adventures awaited her and her friends? And most importantly, how would this blessing change not just her, but the future of the Enchanted Garden itself? The answers to these questions would unfold in time, but for now, Serena stood among her friends, touching her new pendant, feeling more connected to the magic around her than ever before. The garden had been restored, and now, with Luna's blessing, a new chapter in its story was about to begin. The silver threads of moonlight began to fade as dawn approached the Enchanted Garden. Serena stood beneath Willow's sprawling branches, her heart still racing from Luna's blessing. The magical essence that now coursed through her veins felt both familiar and foreign, like a song she'd known all her life, but never truly heard until this moment. How do you feel, dear child? Willow's leaves rustled softly, creating a gentle symphony in the morning breeze. The ancient tree had witnessed countless guardians come and go, but there was something different about Serena, something special that had drawn all the magical beings of the garden to her from the very beginning. "I feel complete," Serena whispered, examining her hands where Luna's blessing still shimmered faintly, but also terrified. What if I'm not ready for this responsibility? A familiar chuckle drew her attention, and she turned to see Rowan approaching, his weathered face creased with a knowing smile. Nobody is ever truly ready for their destiny, Serena. That's what makes it an adventure worth taking. From nearby bushes, Jasper materialized with an unusually serious expression. "You know, I was planning to play one of my famous tricks to lighten the mood, but even I can tell this is too important for that." He paused, then added with a wink, "Though I reserve the right to resume my mischief tomorrow." "Jasper," Fern's gentle voice called out as she emerged from her herb garden, carrying a small bouquet of glowing flowers. "These are for you, Serena. They're moonlight lilies. They only bloom when a new guardian is chosen." The timid elf handed over the ethereal blooms, their petals pulsing with a soft, reassuring light. Thorn appeared suddenly, as was his way, perching on a nearby stone. "The garden has chosen well," he purred, his golden eyes gleaming with approval. "Though I must ask, are you prepared for what comes next?" Serena looked around at her gathered friends, each of them representing a different aspect of the magic she would now be responsible for protecting. "What exactly comes next?" she asked, voicing the question that had been nagging at her mind. "That's the beauty of it." Luna's voice drifted down from above as she descended gracefully, her wings catching the first rays of sunrise. "The path of a guardian is never predetermined. It's shaped by the choices you make and the wisdom you've gained." Rowan stepped forward, leaning on his gnarled staff. "Remember when you first stumbled into this garden, Serena? You were lost, searching for something you couldn't name. Now, look at how far you've come." Serena smiled, remembering that fateful day. "I was looking for my place in the world," she admitted. "I never imagined I'd find it here, among all of you." "The garden has always been more than just trees and flowers," Willow intoned sagely. "It's a sanctuary for those who believe in magic, a haven for those who protect it. And now, it's your home in a way it has never been before." As if responding to Willow's words, the garden itself seemed to pulse with energy. Flowers turned their faces towards Serena, vines swayed in a non-existent breeze, and the very air sparkled with possibility. "But what about the challenges?" Serena asked, thinking of the trials she'd faced to reach this point. "There will be more, won't there?" Jasper hopped onto a mushroom, making it bounce comically. "Of course there will be. But this time, you're not facing them alone. You've got a trickster sprite, a wise old gnome, a talking tree, a mysterious cat, a shy elf, and a riddle-speaking fairy on your side. What could possibly go wrong?" "Everything," Thorn said dryly, "or nothing at all. That's the nature of magic. It's as unpredictable as it is powerful." Fern stepped forward, her usual timidity replaced by quiet confidence. "The garden chose you because you understand something fundamental, Serena. Magic isn't just about power. It's about balance, harmony, and the connections we forge with each other." Luna nodded approvingly. "My blessing was not given lightly, dear Serena. It was earned through your compassion, your courage, and your unwavering belief in the magic that binds us all together." As the sun rose higher, casting golden light through the trees, Serena felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Yes, there would be moments of doubt and uncertainty. But here, surrounded by her magical family, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I accept," she said firmly, her voice carrying across the garden. "I accept the role of guardian, with all its responsibilities and mysteries. I promise to protect this garden and all who dwell within it, to maintain the balance of magic, and to never lose sight of the wonder that brought me here in the first place." As her words rang out, the garden responded with a burst of magical energy. Flowers bloomed instantaneously, trees swayed in celebration, and a shower of sparkles rained down from above. Each of her friends beamed with pride and joy, knowing that a new chapter in the Enchanted Garden's story was about to begin. What challenges await Serena in her role as the new guardian? What ancient secrets will she uncover? And how will her newfound responsibility change not only her life, but the lives of all who dwell within the magical realm? The answers to these questions would unfold in time. But for now, Serena stood tall, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead, knowing she had the support and love of her extraordinary magical family.